Chapter 535. Leading into a Trap. Ling Han smiled faintly. He knew that she would definitely be willing to negotiate. "I have a few questions to ask your highness," he called out loudly. "Oh, then you should first answer one question of mine. Otherwise, there would be no further need for discussion." Helian Sun Shui said calmly, "Is that vial in your possession?" "Indeed." Ling Han made no denial and said, "That's right. It is indeed in my possession." For a while, no further sound was heard from within the carriage. Mayhap Helian Sun Shui was too excited by the news, and was currently getting her emotions back under control. After a while, her voice was heard again. "All right, what do you want to know?" "How did your highness come to know about the matter of this vial?" Ling Han asked. "There are some things which are not appropriate for too many people to know. Let us switch to a different location for further discussion," Helian Sun Shui said. Ling Han nodded and said, "All right, follow me but not too close. Otherwise, if I get a scare, who knows, I may never appear again." Helian Sun Shui gave a cold humph, obviously very displeased. Ling Han walked ahead, whilst the sea race followed behind. The direction that Ling Han took was naturally where the mine was located. If Helian Sun Shui really made a move against him, then he'd lead them to the shaft and kill them with a trap. On the landmass, the members of the sea race were not very fast. Thankfully though, the mine was not very far from the imperial city. As a result, in less than half an hour, they arrived at their destination. "Stop!" Helian Sun Shui halted the advance of the carriage from afar and called out, "Human, is this place that ancient mine?" She had not been deceived. Ling Han stopped, then turned around and said, "That's right." A figure walked out of the carriage. However, her whole body was wrapped in multiple streaks of divine purple light, so there was no way to clearly see her appearance. One could not even see clearly if the figure was tall or short, man or woman. It was only faintly visible that the figure wore some kind of jade green clothing and had extremely long hair. "You all wait here," she commanded. "Yes, your highness." Everyone else strictly obeyed her order. Helian Sun Shui walked towards Ling Han. She had enough assurance that as long as she was near enough to him, she could take Ling Han down directly, and not give him any single bit of chance to escape via teleportation. "That's close enough," Ling Han said, smiling. Actually, with his divine sense, he could allow her to walk a bit closer, but there was no need to let her know his limits and trump cards. Helian Sun Shui could not help but sigh internally. If she attacked from this distance, she only had a 30% chance. "Your Highness, you may speak now," Ling Han said. Helian Sun Shui gave a soft humph. A mere flower blossom tear cultivator actually dared to behave as if he was on equal terms with her, which was something that made her feel very displeased. But for the sake of that vial, she suppressed her anger and said, "In truth, I was the one who deliberately leaked the information to Xian Kong Yun." Ling Han was flabbergasted. Xian Kong Yun was only a chess piece. Killing another with a cursed tool would leave no traces behind. No matter how bizarre the death had been, it would still be identified as natural death because there was absolutely no need for the killer to personally make a move, so how could it be possible that the game would be given away? But if one used a cursed tool, there was one clear fact. Either that the victim was too powerful, and the user had no way of fighting him face to face, or it was possible that the victim's status was too unique, and the user could not make a move right out in the open on him. Which category did Helian Sun Shui belong to? Thus, when Xian Kong Yun died so inconceivably, you immediately guessed that he must have been killed by the cursed tool, and so charged over here with your people, Ling Han deduced. "That's right. If too much time had passed, you would have naturally fled, so how would I be able to find you again?" Helian Sun Shui said. Ling Han was curious and asked, "You are, at minimum, a high-level heaven-tier cultivator. You seek the cursed tool. Could it be that you want to kill a shattering void-tier cultivator? If this really could curse a shattering void-tier cultivator to death, then what level would this jade vial be?" "A god tool. That is not something that you need to concern yourself with." Helian Sun Shui humphed and said, "This kind of treasure is not something that you can possess. Hand it over to me, and firstly, your safety will be guaranteed, and secondly, I can compensate you with a spirit tool." "Oh, what kind of spirit tool? Is it as valuable as this one?" Ling Han drew out the demon birth sword. Very obviously, Helian Sun Shue's figure stiffened slightly. She had definitely seen through the level of the demon birth sword. That was a level 10 spirit tool. What could she produce that would move Ling Han? She had really underestimated this human. His wealth was really a bit shocking. She paused, then said, I am determined to get that vial, so I advise you to hand it over. If not, then even if you flee to the ends of the world, I will still find you. Ling Han smiled, then asked, Really? Are you sure that wherever I go, you will follow? Helian Sun Shui humphed coldly, and was just about to begin boasting. But then, something dawned on her as she looked ahead and said, So this is what you're relying on? To escape into the old mine? Naive, she said coldly. Now that the cursed tool has been withdrawn, the cursed chi in this place would begin to drop. And who am I? A member of the royal clan of the Northern Sea. My natal horoscope was decided by the gods, so how could I possibly be wounded by the cursed chi here? She was really quite at Sundara. Unfortunately, she had no idea what kind of changes had taken place here. Cursed chi was really nothing in comparison. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, Then come chase after me. Who knows, if you manage to catch up to me, maybe I'll let you have it. He broke out into a run and fled into the old mine. Helian Sun Shui did not know what he meant, but after a moment of thought, she was sure that it was not very possible that it was a compliment. Immediately, she gave a cold humph and followed him in. Ling Han moved recklessly and attacked madly. He wanted to draw out the 12 ancient corpses beneath the ground here. The lake of blood would do too. Of course, the silver spider was the ideal target. In short, whatever could suppress Helian Sun Shui would do. And after this one battle, would any more sea race dare to come here? So you choose to do things the hard way. Helian Sun Shui humphed coldly. With a palm strike, her origin power transformed into a beautiful gigantic hand that pressed down towards Ling Han. The might of the palm strike had yet to hit him, but the terrifying pressure behind this blow had already caused cracks to appear all over Ling Han's body, and blood poured crazily from his wounds. One had to know that he had body of iron sheet. The toughness of his body was comparable to precious metal of the same level as he, but the mere pressure was enough to shatter his skin. If he really suffered a strike, what chance did he have at surviving it? What a damn powerful woman! Ling Han exclaimed in surprise, and tossed out both arms. He threw out the 2 divine corpses. He did not plan to take them back. It should not be a bad option to bury these 2 divine corpses in here. There had to be a very powerful background behind the 12 ancient corpses, and they were definitely not inferior to these 2 divine corpses in his possession. Helian Sun Shui halted. She arrived in front of the 2 divine corpses, and an expression of surprise appeared on her face that was not visible to anyone else. This is a divine corpse, she mumbled softly, and her expression of disbelief became even more pronounced. Ling Han actually had 2 divine corpses in his possession. This human was indeed very strange. However, the divinity of these 2 divine corpses had already been expended completely. Moreover, this was the mortal plane, and it had its own rules. A god-level elite cultivator was not that much stronger than a shattering void tier 1, and he wanted to use these 2 divine corpses to scare her into stopping. How naive! With a casual wave of her hand, she separated the 2 divine corpses. Since the essence of their divinity had been exhausted, they had lost whatever value they had. She couldn't be bothered to deal with them in that case. There is no way you can escape, Helian Sun Shui declared icily. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, Who said I wanted to escape? He had arrived at the site where the cursed tool had been placed. With a single punch, a terrifying amount of origin power added with his own body's physical strength created a very scary amount of destructive power. Pang! A pillar of blood soared upwards. Chapter 536. Unable to withstand a single blow. Hong, the pillar of blood soared skywards, and a terrible scene appeared. Multiple stars actually fell as if it was the end of the world. Ling Han did not hesitate in the slightest and entered into the Black Tower at his first chance to dodge this calamity. The stench of blood permeated and blocked the divine sense from extending outside the body, and affected visibility as well. As a result, Helian Sun Shui actually did not discover that Ling Han had disappeared at first, and still remained in the mine as she wanted to find Ling Han, subdue him and snatch away the vial of curses. But it was only a mere instant. The ocean of blood soared skywards, its terrible might on full display. Helian Sun Shue's expression changed drastically. With her cultivation level, she was naturally able to clearly detect how terrifying this bloody water was. She hurriedly shot upwards. She was sure that Ling Han had long since teleported out. Otherwise, how could it be possible that a mere flower blossom tier cultivator like him be able to withstand such terrifying might and power? It was too late. A blood-colored tsunami wave quickly formed. This time, the 12 undecayed corpses did not appear. However, the gigantic silver spider appeared, and a sacred terrifying aura emanated from its mountain-sized body. It was really too powerful. Before, Ling Han merely took one look at it, and it almost caused his soul to fly away and scatter and his physical body to burst even though he possessed a sliver of divine sense of the heaven tier, and furthermore, had already formed the body of iron sheet. The toughness of his physical body was on par with precious metal of the same level. Ling Han was already so. What more when it was another? The army of sea race in the distance released terrible cries as their bodies exploded one after another. The giant silver spider's gaze swept over Helian Sun Shue, and this time, it did not simply shift its gaze like it was staring at a bug, but showed a hint of anger in its expression. A huge leg rose and pierced through the air towards Helian Sun Shue. Even though Ling Han was hiding in the Black Tower, his expression changed drastically upon seeing this blow. It was too powerful, so powerful that it could even shoot down the stars in the skies. Helian Sun Shue was completely unable to dodge. With a PU, her slender body was already pierced through. The spider's leg pierced through her body, and there were lingering traces of blood remaining on the spear-like silver limb. Pooh! Helian Sun Shue threw up blood, but an immeasurable divine light flickered around her body which, too, was sacred and elegant, and filled with an ancient air. The giant silver spider actually revealed a very human expression. It abruptly withdrew its limb, its size shrinking swiftly, then transformed into a silver light that shot into the waves. Furthermore, the waters too began to swiftly subside, and very quickly, it had completely disappeared into the mine, as if the previous phenomenon had never happened. Except the army of the sea race had been turned into minced meat lying outside the mine, while Helian Sun Shue had her body pierced through. Ling Han exited the Black Tower, thinking that this place was really the perfect location to trap someone. Even a high-level heaven-tier cultivator had practically been killed in an instant. And this had also allowed him to see the gap between the heaven tier and the shattering void tier. Unable to withstand even a single strike. The higher one's level in martial arts, the larger the power gap would be between different cultivation levels. Even someone as powerful as Helian Sun Shue was unable to fight back at all in the face of that giant silver spider. He flew towards Helian Sun Shue, yet saw that the divine light that had surrounded this woman before had already disappeared and revealed her true face. She really was a beauty, with a fine nose and cherry lips. She had long shapely eyebrows and skin as fair and smooth as jade. However, her eyes were tightly closed. Otherwise, they would have definitely added some further radiance to the level of her beauty. And on her left shoulder, there was a bloody hole. At this moment, blood was currently gushing out. It was obviously where the silver spider had pierced her through. Ling Han was astonished. Helian Sun Shue was actually not dead. Though none of her vital spots had been hit, with the power of the giant silver spider, if one was pierced through, the attack would explode inside one's body, and the destructive power of such a blow would be enough to destroy everything. From the look of things, the giant silver spider had obviously been merciful. Ling Han's gaze swept over her, and instantly, his killing intent rose. This woman was too dangerous. Moreover, she wanted the vial of curses in his possession, and would obviously not give up until she had gotten hold of it. He definitely could not leave this future trouble alive. Ling Han drew out the demon birth sword. Having compassion for the fairer sex depended on the situation. To be soft-hearted to one's enemy would be equivalent to be irresponsible for oneself, one's family, and friends. He did not hesitate and struck out with a slash. Wang! A halo of light emanated from Helian Sun Shue's body and transformed into a protective layer which blocked the attack of the demon birth sword. Fuck! Ling Han sensed it slightly, and discovered that this halo of light originated from the necklace worn around Helian Sun Shue's neck. To be more accurate, it should have come from the pendant hung on the necklace. Previously, when the giant silver spider released a severe blow, this pendant shone too, and made the giant silver spider be merciful and not erase Hellion Sun Shui. Now, it had managed to block Ling Han's fatal attack. From the look of things, this was an automatic defensive spirit tool. However, the giant silver spider was too powerful, so powerful that the spirit tool did not even have the time to activate. And in comparison, Ling Han was much too weak, which was why this spirit tool could so easily block his attack. Annoying! Ling Han bared his teeth. At first, he had thought that he would be entirely worthy of being recognized as the strongest person in the North region. Who would have foreseen that he would be even more helpless than he was in the desolate North? At least there, everyone would have to respectfully address him as Grandmaster Ling. But what about now? Did the identity of a heaven-tier alchemist have any effect or influence on Hellion Sun Shui or the giant silver spider? He was dissatisfied, and threw out a few more strikes. He even made use of sword qi, but the defensive ability of that halo of light was really too strong. No matter what he did, it was absolutely useless. Ling Han did everything he could think of, but it was still useless. He had even wanted to draw her into the Black Tower. In that way, whether he killed her would no longer matter, as it would be enough to suppress this princess of the sea race for the rest of her life. However, that immeasurable divine light similarly stopped Ling Han's divine sense from wrapping around her. In short, even though Hellion Sun Shui appeared to be in a coma at this moment, it was as if she had become a porcupine, which he couldn't even touch. He did not make any further move, and that pendant no longer shone. Hellion Sun Shui's bright as moonlight, beautiful face and long slender body was revealed. Ling Han swept one look over her, and mumbled with much malice, "Flat chest." Actually, it was not really that flat, but in comparison with Lu Yutong, Li Xichan, and Zhu Xian, who were well developed to a shocking level, she was naturally on a much more inferior level. The shocking thing was that the wound on her left shoulder healed very quickly, and the blood had already stopped seeping out. The wound slowly began to scab over. One had to know that this wound was created by a supreme creature, and the martial intent of the giant silver spider had been left behind in this wound. As long as this martial intent was still present, it would have been impossible for the wound to heal. And how long could the martial intent of a shattering void tier cultivator last? Millennia. Hellion Sun Shui should not have the ability to disperse the martial intent of the shattering void tier. It should have been the giant silver spitter. In the instant it withdrew its limb, it withdrew its martial intent as well. As a result, though Hellion Sun Shui appeared to be wounded very severely, only a hole had been pierced through in her shoulder. The reason she fell unconscious was because she, too, had suffered the barrage of the martial intent of a shattering void tier cultivator. With her divine sense, she was definitely not able to withstand it. This also meant that she could possibly awaken at any moment. Fuck, and he actually came so close to her. Ling Han's heart shivered. Since he was not able to kill this princess of the sea race, then his only option would be to flee, and let her just come to hunt him down in the middle state. But it was too late. Hellion Sun Shui's eyelids trembled lightly, and she opened her eyes. What a beautiful woman. She actually possessed a pair of sea blue eyes, and matched with her jade-like fair skin, fine, straight nose and clear-cut features, she had the charm that belonged to one from a foreign land. Who are you? She looked at Ling Han in confusion, then looked down at herself. And who am I? She had lost her memory? Chapter 537. Amnesia. After sustaining a single strike from the giant silver spider, Hellion Sun Shui actually lost her memory. That was a very likely possibility. Because her divine sense had suffered an attack on the level of the shattering void tier, amnesia was a very ordinary consequence. But the question was this amnesia a short-term loss of memory, or a permanent loss? If it was only a temporary one, then how long would it last for? A few days, a few months, or a few years? Ling Han was astonished. He realized that he could not sense any movement of origin power from her body at all. Could it be that after she had lost her memory, she did not even know how to circulate her origin power anymore? Was that even possible? Ling Han could not confirm it, but since this princess of the sea race could no longer circulate origin power, then what threat could she be to him? One had to know that the reason that cultivators could overturn mountains and empty oceans was because they had cultivated origin power. Without origin power, the pure strength of cultivators would not be that much stronger than any ordinary person, and their defense would not be much stronger either.
Just make a flower blossom tier cultivator unable to circulate his origin power defensively, and then have ordinary soldiers try and attack him with a multitude of arrows. She was guaranteed to look like a beehive just from the number of holes he would have.
However, Hellion Sun Shui still had a spirit tool on her that could activate on its own, so if anyone wanted to kill her, it was practically an impossible feat. Ling Han gave a sigh. He actually couldn't do anything to a woman that couldn't even fight back.
Now, he could only hope that this princess of the sea race would have amnesia for a long enough period of time, long enough to allow him to develop to an extent that he no longer had to fear her.
Hellion Sun Shui stared at Ling Han blankly, yet with clear hope in her gaze, as if hoping that Ling Han could tell her who she was. There was a touching glint of emotion brimming in her large sea blue eyes. Ling Han felt that this woman was a little cute at this moment. Previously, she had been so insufferably arrogant, and now she actually seemed like a pitiful little puppy. He could not help but smile and said, "My name is Ling Han. Your name is Hellion Sun Shui. Do you have any recollection of this name?" Hellion Sun Shui? Hellion Sun Shui? The princess of the sea race shook her head endlessly, and the only missing gesture was biting on one of her fingers. After a long time, an expression of pleased surprise appeared on her face. "My name is Hellion Sun Shui." Ling Han was defeated. Did this woman have an attribute of being stupidly adorable? Where are we now? Why are we here? What is the relation between the two of us? Hellion Sun Shui asked in a single breath like a curious kid. Ling Han pondered for a moment, then answered, "This is Fire Country. As for you, I was the one who picked you up. I also do not know who you actually are. As for this place, we came here to walk around. All right, now that our walk is over, let us both go back to our respective mothers. Goodbye." He turned around and prepared to leave. He really did not want to stay by the side of a high-level heaven-tier cultivator. Who knew when this woman would regain her memories? If she suddenly made a move on him at that time, he'd be done for. He could not be soft-hearted in this situation. He had only took a single step when he felt a tightening brace around his legs. Hellion Sun Shui had actually clamped her arms around his legs. This woman was behaving like a shrew without any care for her image. She sat on the ground as her arms wrapped around one of his legs. More importantly, this woman was terrifyingly strong, and Ling Han was actually unable to struggle out of her vice-like grip. How could this be possible? Wasn't she no longer able to circulate origin power? How could she still possess such tremendous strength? Could it be? Ling Han immediately came to a realization. This woman was in the same situation as he. She, too, had cultivated a physical technique. At this moment, she was using purely her physical strength, and he guessed that it had to be on the level of the spiritual infant tier at least. This was what made Ling Han feel as if he had been locked in chains forged from divine metal, unable to move a single muscle. "Let go," he said. "No," Hellion Sun Shui said with a great amount of determination. She indeed did not release him. On the other hand, her grip became even tighter than before. Damn! Instantly, cracks could be heard from the bones in Ling Han's leg. He had formed body of iron sheet and his physical body was as tough as precious metals on the same level as he, but the problem here was, how could level 6 metal be able to withstand the brute force which was, at the very least, on level 7? If this went on, the bones in his leg could really be broken into pieces just from this. Ling Han hurriedly surrendered as he said, "All right, all right, all right. I'll let you continue to follow me, okay?" Hellion Sun Shui had lost her memory, but her intelligence did not seem to have been lowered from that. She raised her head to look at Ling Han doubtfully and asked, "Really? You're not lying to me?" "If I lie to you, then I'm a sea demon," Ling Han blurted out carelessly. Hellion Sun Shui was a member of the sea race in the first place, so did not have any prejudice against sea demons. She released her grip and got to her feet, but then she immediately took hold of one of Ling Han's hands, as if still fearing that he would escape. Ling Han gritted his teeth. When this princess of the sea race recovered her memory and found out that she had actually held hands with him, who knew if she would dissolve into humiliated fury and tear him into a few hundred or a few thousand pieces. "Sea girl, remember, you were the one who took the initiative to hold my hand. Don't you act dumb about it in future," he said seriously. Oh! Hellion Sun Shui had lost her memory, so she naturally couldn't care less. "No, you have to swear." Ling Han wanted to use something to control her as much as possible. That way, if she actually managed to recover her memory in future, he could still babble some nonsense to deliberately anger her, which would allow him some time to escape alive.
What kind of swear?
Helian Sun Shui asked a little dumbly. Just say that you are the one who took the initiative to take my hand. If you wrongly accuse me of it in future, the Sea Emperor is a great big idiot, Ling Han said. Helian Sun Shui naturally, without a doubt, held up her fair, slender right hand and swore. A thought flashed through Ling Han's head. Could he make use of the vial of curses?
Though she looked a little dumb and cute at the moment, he only had to recall how she had been like before to know that this woman was definitely a firm, ruthless woman.
The moment she regained her memory, it would be Ling Han who would be rendered absolutely helpless. He made a move to pluck a hair from her head, but that pendant immediately shone and blocked his hand from moving any further.
Ling Han, with no other choice, could only say, "Pluck out one of your hairs and give to me."
Helian Sun Shui bit on one of her fingers, and after a moment, she shook her head and said, "I can't."
Why not?
Ling Han was astonished.
Could it be that she had already begun to regain her memory? I seem to remember Mother saying before that I can't recklessly give a man something from my body, Helian Sun Shui said with absolute seriousness.
This. Ling Han thought for a moment, then asked, "So if it was a woman it would be fine?" He could let Hu Niu out if that was the case.
No.
Helian Sun Shui shook her head stubbornly. Ling Han was speechless. Why couldn't he even manage to deceive a stupidly cute woman who had lost her memory? This was too much of a failure.
AI.
He gave a sigh and took a step to leave. Helian Sun Shui hurriedly followed behind him, one hand still firmly gripping onto the corner of Ling Han's shirt as if she was a little wife who had been wronged. Ling Han walked to where the army of Sea Race had once been. The only thing visible now was a scene of slaughter and carnage. Every single one of them had died from their bodies bursting.
There was not a single complete corpse visible here anymore, as all of them had been turned into ripped pieces of bone and flesh, blood soaking all over the ground.
Ah! A scared expression appeared on Helian Sun Shui's face, and she could not help but throw herself into Ling Han's arms, hugging him tightly to herself. Ka ka ka! Immediately, loud noises could be heard from Ling Han's ribs. Fuck! Be a bit gentler. With you strangling me in such a way, I am just about to join those people on the ground, crushed by your embrace.
Moreover, your small breasts really have no gradation or texture, and I don't have the slightest feeling that there are 2 lumps of flesh pressing down on my chest.
If you keep holding on, I am going to die, Ling Han gasped out. Chapter 538. Kidnap. Helian Sun Shui finally released him, but hid herself behind Ling Han, tightly gripping onto the corner of his shirt. Ling Han could distinctly feel her trembling. Such an overbearing, domineering woman actually had such a delicate side to her. Could amnesia cause someone's character to experience a tremendous change? Or would it cause someone to show a side that they usually kept hidden deep within? Ling Han did not know, nor did he care. The biggest problem for him now was, how was he supposed to throw this huge burden away? This was practically a time bomb. When she actually managed to regain her memories, this time bomb would explode. Just the mere thought of it would give him insomnia. "Hi Nyowan, let's see how fast you can run," Ling Han said. He had already led Helian Sun Shui far away from the mine to avoid her going into another emotional turbulence and strangling him into a corpse.
Oh.
Helian Sun Shui nodded, then asked curiously, "Why do you call me Hai Nyo?"
"Because I want to."
Ling Han glared at her. Instantly, Helian Sun Shui's eyes brimmed with tears.
"Dni," she said with an aggrieved pout. "Why are you being so harsh toward me?"
Immediately, Ling Han bared his teeth. "If you want to cry, just go ahead, but why do you have to grip a hand around his neck?" Did she not know that this move could cause a fatality? However, he did not dare to carelessly toss away such a time bomb, either. Otherwise, if she really did explode, even if she only possessed the physical strength of the spiritual infant tier, it was still a very terrifying thing. Furthermore, this was only his estimate. What if her physical technique had reached the level of the heaven tier?
"I won't be harsh toward you anymore, all right?"
Ling Han sighed. Against a Helian Sun Shui at her prime, he would not admit defeat in the slightest, and even tricked her successfully.
If it was not for the fact that she had a very powerful spirit tool in her possession, she would have been killed by his trap already.
but the current her was unable to circulate origin power, and her intelligence had also become adorably low. But now, on the contrary, she actually managed to suppress Ling Han. This fact was something that Ling Han found inconceivable no matter how much he pondered on the matter. Why had things become this way? Hellion Sun Shui let go, her expression clearly saying, "If you dare to be harsh toward me, I'll continue to strangle you," acting perfectly like a little wife. Ling Han broke out in a cold sweat. He had already had quite a few times of physical contact with her. After this woman regained her memory, she would definitely fly into a humiliated rage. Moreover, he had even just about estimated the measurements of her flat chest, which was really inadequate. "Then let's go." His legs exerted force and his entire person immediately shot up into the skies. Hellion Sun Shui quickly took a leap just like Ling Han. However, she was faster, and also managed to reach a greater height. Immediately, she had surpassed Ling Han. At first, she was greatly astonished that she could actually manage to jump so high, but then she instantly became excited, releasing a bout of clear, tinkling laughter. Ling Han sighed. It would be nice if she could stay the way she was now forever, and leave all the fighting and killing for men to do. A thought flashed through his head. Could he use this period of time to instill some concepts of peace and beauty into Hellion Sun Shui? Though she had lost her memory, her current experiences would become part of her memories in future as well, and would definitely have some influence on her. To personally train her. It's a very dastardly plan, but I like it. Though neither of them used any kind of technique, the pure force of their physical bodies was already terrifying enough. Moreover, the advantage of brute force was that it could last a long time, just like the brute force of demonic beasts and unlike that of cultivators, who were limited by the size of the spiritual oceans in their dantian. The moment their origin power was completely expended, they would become absolutely useless. As a result, the two of them raced for over an hour in a single breath, and soon arrived at the small town Ling Han was staying in. However, neither of them was short of breath. Ling Han was actually a little worried. There was a risk to bringing this girl home. Hopefully, it wouldn't lead to a scene of slaughter and bloodshed. But for the sake of instilling some concepts of peace, happiness, and the like, he had to let this girl experience what it felt like to be cared for and loved. They entered into the Ling residence. When the servants saw Ling Han, they all bowed and paid their respects, but unlike the restrained manner of other servants, they had a friendly and cordial air. Soon after, Ling Dongxing and Yu Hongchang ran out as well. Their son had been gone for a few days, but to them, it was as if several years had passed since they last saw him. "This is..." Yu Hongchang was surprised. Her son was really amazing. Just a few days, and he had kidnapped yet another beautiful daughter-in-law. What else could she be? The girl looked very bashful, and kept holding on to the corner of her son's shirt, showing just how much she stuck close to him. TSK, she was really beautiful. Furthermore, she had a pair of unusual blue eyes and a good figure as well. Especially her legs, they were slender and long, and her backside was highly raised, displaying an amazing flexibility. Though, her breasts were a little small. That's all right. Even if she gave birth, it was not a must that the baby had to feed from her. Yu Hongchang had already visualized what would happen many years in the future, and a bright smile immediately appeared on her face. She walked over and asked, "Miss, what is your name?" She did not pay any attention to her son at all. "I am Hellion Sun Shui," the princess of the sea race answered. "Miss, come with me." Yu Hongchang held Hellion Sun Shui's hand and left naturally to teach her some secret techniques as her mother-in-law, such as how to handle her son. Ling Dongxing patted Ling Han's shoulder in quiet sympathy, and both father and son were simultaneously rendered speechless. Ling Han let Hunyou out. When the little girl saw Hellion Sun Shui, her ferocious nature was on full display. This woman gave her a very strong oppressive feeling, making her have the urge to rip open the former's neck. "Come, let's eat," Ling Han said, smiling. Hunyou's expression instantly switched to a smile, and she happily followed him in. It was not possible that the matter of the sea race would simply end like this. After all, a princess had died, so it would definitely give rise to a great commotion. However, even those far off in the imperial city could feel the activity at the Battle of the Mine, so if the sea race really headed there to investigate the place, they would definitely not come out of it easily. With that giant silver spider in place, he believed that there was no need to worry about the desolate north. What worried Ling Han, on the other hand, was that old mine. What exactly was buried underneath it? Just 12 ancient corpses and a mountain-sized spider? He did not believe that was all. But with the giant silver spider there, could he go to the deeper levels to find out? If he wanted to know what exactly was buried underneath the old mine, he needed greater power. At the very least, he had to regain his cultivation level at the heaven tier backed by the Black Tower. He should be able to explore further. The safest way was naturally for him to break through to the shattering void tier. That way, he'd be able to barge in directly. He planned to stay at home for a dozen over days before heading towards the middle state. Both Lu Yutong and Li Xichan decided to stay back in the Ling residence and wait for Ling Han to return. Firstly, they already had sufficient resources for cultivation, and secondly, they were there to protect the Ling clan. Li Xichan still had to help concoct alchemical pills for Ling Dongxing and his wife. With Ling Han's training, Li Xichan had improved extremely fast in alchemy. By now, she was only restricted by her own cultivation level. Otherwise, she would have already made the leap to become a black-grade high-level alchemist. The strategy they were using was to obtain victory in a roundabout way. As long as they had convinced their parents-in-law, did they still have to worry that Ling Han was unwilling to recognize them as his wives? Ling Han also left Guang Yuan and Zhu Wujiu behind to guard the Ling clan. Their talent was limited, and if they wanted to break through to the flower blossom tier, they still needed to accumulate enough power for at least a dozen over years. They wouldn't be able to help much even if they followed Ling Han, so it would be better for them to stay behind and work hard on their cultivation. Thus, after a dozen over days, Ling Han, Hu Niu, as well as Helian Sun Shui set out, heading towards Extreme Yang City. There was no way he could manage to shove off this sea girl. Even if Yu Hongchang had successfully duped her into calling Yu Hongchang mother, it was as if she was a newly born chick. Since the first person she had set eyes on was Ling Han, she was determined to follow him. Chapter 539. Returning to Extreme Yang City. Bringing two girls, one big and one small, Ling Han set out towards Extreme Yang City. Hu Niu and Helian Sun Shui were born rivals. They would fight over food and fight over who got to stick to Ling Han. Furthermore, Hu Niu finally met a worthy competitor because Helian Sun Shui's appetite actually did not lose to hers. In addition, she was naturally very strong, and so usually managed to get into an advantageous position. Ling Han summoned Na Ji Yen out for interrogation again, and found out that the royal clan of Helian actually had the bloodline of true dragons. The imperial clan of the Central Sea possessed the purest bloodline of true dragons. The Sea Emperor of every generation was the ruler over all four seas, one who deserved the title of emperor. In addition, all the royal clans of the four seas were no minor characters, either. They, too, had the bloodline of true dragons, but theirs was slightly inferior in purity. No wonder. Ling Han nodded. He had cultivated the 9 dragons tyrant body art, and once he reached the level of accomplished, he would possess the power of 9 true dragons. Why did he use true dragons to make a comparison? That was because true dragons were the divine beasts with the most powerful physical bodies. Since Helian Sun Shui possessed the bloodline of true dragons, even if it wasn't very pure, her physical strength was definitely something to be feared. Hu Niu was a freak, but there was too big of a gap between their cultivation levels, so it was natural that she could not compare with her. Just look at how Ling Han, who had cultivated the 9 dragons tyrant body art, still could do nothing to Helian Sun Shui. Helian Sun Shui was like a blank sheet of paper at the moment. One could freely write as one wished on it. Ling Han tried as much as possible to let her accept happy experiences. Even if she bickered with Hu Niu, that was only something playful, and not the kind of death battle that would take place between mortal enemies. In comparison, Hu Niu seemed more like an adult as she never cried nor threw tantrums. Helian Sun Shui, on the other hand, would cry and throw tantrums. She obviously possessed a terrifying amount of bare strength, yet upon the slightest issue, she would widen her eyes in sorrow, looking like she would weep at any moment. She had gotten addicted to acting adorable. They passed through the Fallen Moon Gorge on their way into the North region. With their speed, they naturally did not need to spend a few months before finally making it into Extreme Yang City. In a mere 10 days, they had once again returned to this ancient city. Previously, they had been traveling at full speed, and though they had seen many cities on their journey, they merely passed by without entering. Thus, now that they had entered into the city, Helian Sun Shui immediately became excited and would look here and there at the surrounding sights. Cotton candy? She took it. Sugar figurines? She took it. Bamboo toy horse? She took it. Ling Han could only keep following behind her and pay for her. This sea girl had gone a little mad in her playing. As she ate, she would joyously laugh. Childish! Hu Niu declared in disdain, yet had forgotten that she, too, was holding onto a sugar figurine which she was currently licking happily. Where did this little girl come from? She looks so pretty. Helian Sun Shui was like a sprite, beautiful and filled with a foreign charm, and was naturally eye-catching. Soon enough, she caught the eye of some people. That one was a spoiled young master, who was currently staring lewdly at Helian Sun Shui's pretty face. His saliva was practically about to drip out of his mouth. However, just when his gaze moved downwards, wanting to asterisk at Helian Sun Shui's entrancing mountains, he was stunned, and quickly shifted his eyes back upwards. Too bad she was flat-chested. Immediately from behind him, 4 sturdy servants stepped out, all of them looking as fierce as wolves and tigers. Helian Sun Shui was so scared that she screamed in panic, and hurriedly ducked back behind Ling Han. With her speed, there were really not that many people who could catch up to her. Furthermore, so what if they actually caught up to her? With a shove backed by her titanic strength, probably even Ling Han would have his bones broken. She obviously had terrifying power yet deliberately pretended to be weak. Did she not fear that she would be struck by lightning? Ling Han mocked her behavior internally, then turned and said to Helian Sun Shui, "Look what this trash is doing. This is called taking advantage of one's position to bully others. See girl, don't you think that this kind of person is really detestable?" Helian Sun Shui nodded her head quickly and patted her chest. With lingering fear she said, "Detestable, almost scared me to death. So we cannot act like this kind of person, right?" Ling Han continued to guide her with enticing words. "Right, we can't act like this kind of person." Helian Sun Shui nodded. "However, we also cannot allow such trash to bully us. Remember, we do not take the initiative to trifle with others, as that is not a right thing to do. But if others trifle with us, we cannot hold our punches, either. When we should fight back, we should still fight back. We are not punching bags, right?" Ling Han continued. These words were a little long, and Helian Sun Shui was a little dazed. However, out of habit she still nodded and said, "Right. Who do you think you damn are to actually dare to interfere in my matters?" The spoiled young master was displeased now. Did these two people treat him as empty air? They actually began to chat idly as if there was no one else around them. With a wave of his hand he commanded, "Beat up this man until he's disabled, then bring the girl back to the residence." "Yes, young master." The 4 servants once again set forth. With a flick of Ling Han's finger, a flash of energy transformed into 4 streaks which respectively hit the foreheads of the 4 servants. Suddenly, pu, 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 a bloody hole appeared on the foreheads of the 4 servants, and they dropped onto the ground abruptly. "You, how dare you? You actually dare to touch even members of my Zhang clan?" The spoiled young master shouted in anger, both shocked and afraid. "Who knows who you are?" With another flick of Ling Han's finger the spoiled young master followed in the footsteps of the 4 servants. A bloody hole appeared on his forehead, and he flopped onto the ground. All around them, the passers-by all stepped back. Matters had become serious. That was the young master of the Zhang clan, yet he had actually died here. The Zhang clan would definitely fly into a thunderous rage, and by then, whoever was actually present at the scene would be in for a bout of extremely bad luck. They had better run quickly. Yet Ling Han was absolutely uncaring. In the north region, there were pitifully few people that could fill him with wariness. Furthermore, didn't he still have a tremendously strong princess of the sea race beside him? If needed, he could let her have the opportunity to train for a bit. "Let's go." He continued to head towards the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Meanwhile, Helian Sun Shui and Hu Niu, one on either side, held onto one of his hands. Before entering into Extreme Yang City, Ling Han had disguised his appearance and made it so he looked like a young man in his mid-20s. This shocked Helian Sun Shui a bit, but she still managed to see through his disguise with a single look. Obviously, even if she had temporarily forgotten how to circulate her origin power, there was no decline to her perception, which was shockingly high. The Spirit Treasures Pavilion was located in the center of Extreme Yang City, and even if they walked around and played around on their way here, they had still arrived in front of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion about an hour later. Hold it right there. A group of people raced over. They should be the people of the Zhang clan. When they found out one of their clansmen had actually been killed in broad daylight right out in the open, they naturally raced over to seek vengeance. How could it be possible that Ling Han would pay them any heed? He simply stepped directly into the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Hunyou, though, turned back and made a face at those people. Damn it! The members of the Zhang clan all roared in rage. The two most powerful parties in Extreme Yang City was the Spirit Treasures Pavilion and the Alchemist Society. Who would dare make trouble in these two locations? They could only choose to wait outside. Ling Han couldn't possibly hide inside for the rest of his life, right? Ling Han and the girls entered into the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, and immediately, a beautiful female attendant approached and asked in a crisp voice, "Two honored customers, do you want to buy something?" Hunyou was extremely displeased, and her hands on her hips piped up, "Niu is here too." Ling Han laughed and said, "Pass along a message to Ing Hong. Just say that someone is here to fulfill an agreement." Chapter 540. Setting out to the Middle State. Could I be so bold to ask, do you perhaps go by the surname Han? The female attendant queried. I am Han Lin. Ling Han nodded. He had previously made arrangements with Ing Hong that he would come under the name of Han Lin. So you really are Mr. Han? The female attendant looked pleasantly surprised. Young mistress has long since been waiting for you. Please come with me. Young mistress has commanded that the moment Mr. Han arrives, we should immediately bring you to her. Ling Han nodded, and allowed the female attendant to lead the way. With the guidance of the female attendant, they soon arrived at the courtyard where Ing Hong was. The female attendant entered first to announce their presence. Yo, I say, Mr. Han, you are finally here. Ing Hong appeared, her voluptuous figure extremely captivating, enough to make one drool at the sight of her. She took one look at Helian Sun Shui, and could not help but look stunned. Then she said, Young Master Han, you are really very awesome. You've just captured my dear Xianer, and now, you've captured a new girl? Am I Mr. Han or Young Master Han? Ling Han would naturally ignore any private questions, and simply chose to skip over to the next topic. Yet Ing Hong was not willing to give the matter up and wore a mischievous grin. Hee hee, I'd really like to see how you're going to explain it to little sister Xianer later. Is it really an appropriate thing to do for you to sow discord? Ling Han asked. I have big breasts, so of course I can, this woman said without the slightest hint of shame. Female hoodlum. Meanwhile, Helian Sun Shui could not help but look down at her own breasts, and a strange expression appeared on her face. Could it be that it was because her breasts weren't large enough that Ling Han kept criticizing her? She turned to look once more at Ing Hong. Indeed, those were huge waves, and far from what she could compare to. Secretly, she decided that she would properly train her pectoral muscles in future. Come on, little sister Xianer has already waited for you for a great many days. Ing Hong changed the subject, her eyes sweeping cunningly over Helian Sun Shui. She seemed to anticipate very much the scene of a daggers-drawn confrontation that would appear after the two girls met. She led Ling Han and the two girls into the courtyard, then sent someone to call Zhu Xianer over. In a few mere moments, a fragrant breeze swept in. Zhu Xianer appeared. Her face was once again veiled by her white veil. Though her expression could not be seen, an endless amount of pleasure and surprise could be seen from her gaze alone. For an outstanding beauty, even a mere look would be enough to captivate a man. Big brother Han, she called out and took a leap, intending to jump right into Ling Han's arms. Pa! She had not yet landed when both her arms were pulled back at the same time. Furthermore, there was not only one person pulling her back, but two Hunyou and Helian Sun Shui. I don't allow you to touch Niu's Ling Han. Hunyou fumed. Who are you? Meanwhile, Helian Sun Shui was sizing Zhu Xianer, and the expression on her face was similarly unfriendly. Before they left, Lu Yutong and Li Xichan had instilled many ideas into her, such as not to allow other women to get near to Ling Han. Otherwise, they would steal Ling Han away. The moment she opened her eyes, the first person she saw was Ling Han, and like how some animals would think the first living creature they set eyes on when they were born their parent, She also clung close to Ling Han. Thus, she was naturally very careful. She would definitely not allow any woman to steal Ling Han away. Zhu Xian'er was shocked. This mere gaze caused waves in Ling Han's heart, and made him feel an urge to push her down. Tiske, I say, little sister Xian'er, you're already calling big brother so fast? Ing Hong said from one side, and gave an exaggerated shiver. I'm about to die from the sappiness. If you don't speak, nobody's going to take you for a mute, Ling Han said, smiling. How is it? In my own territory, you will not even allow me to speak? Ing Hong humphed. All right, fine. But shouldn't we be setting out soon? We're all just waiting for you. Now that you're here, let's set out. Though she said that they would set out immediately, they still prepared for a few hours.
It was a big matter to set out to the Middle State in order to take part in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion competition. So how could they simply set out just like that?
They naturally had to make some preparations beforehand. Their ride was an extremely lavish carriage. Not only did it contain chairs and beds, it was actually divided into 3 compartments. By day, they could sit inside the first compartment and chat, and at night, the women would sleep in the second compartment, whereas Ling Han alone occupied the third compartment. The North region was very, very big. Merely traveling from extreme Yang City to the border between the North region and the Middle State would require over a dozen days, and the Middle State was even larger. If one wanted to travel to the headquarters of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion located in the Million Treasure City, that would be another 20 over days of traveling. The journey would take at least about a month's time, and this was still because their carriage was extremely fast. Otherwise, if they were using an ordinary carriage, then even if the journey took 8 to 10 years' time, don't begrudge it for being too slow. However, they had just stepped out of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion when they saw a group of aggressive-looking people blocking their advance. Ing Hong was surprised. At the entrance to the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, she, the young mistress, actually had someone block her way? What was the meaning of this? Brat, surrender your life. When they saw Ling Han walk out, immediately, 5 shining weapons waved forth. How dare you? When the guard of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion saw this, he immediately moved. With a wave of his sword, ding ding ding, the 5 weapons were all sent flying from their owner's hands. When the members of the Zhang clan saw this, they were instantly displeased and said, "This brat killed our young master. Previously, he kept hiding inside the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. We gave you face and did not charge in to apprehend him, but now that he's come out, do you all still intend to shelter him?" The guard of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion merely sneered coldly. What a bunch of idiots. They actually dared to make a move on young mistress's honored guest. They really were tired of living. The Zhang clan, a clan that merely had spiritual ocean tier cultivators, actually dared to reason things out with the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Get lost, he declared icily, his killing intent on full display. If you continue pestering, then I'll kill all of you. The members of the Zhang clan were naturally unwilling to yield, and began to shout. Even the Spirit Treasures Pavilion cannot be unreasonable. After killing our young master, you still plan to flee in a grand manner? Hand over the criminal. The god sneered coldly and drew his sword. He said, "What a bunch of reckless blind idiots." Shwa, shwa, shwa. After consecutively killing a number of them, those that remained were scared off, and hurriedly turned right around and fled for their lives. Ling Han and the others did not pay any heed to this. A battle of this level, in their eyes, was only child's play. The carriage began to move, advancing towards the Middle State. Ling Han smiled faintly and asked, "Has anything big happened recently?" "Yes, there definitely has." Ing Hong answered immediately. Chapter 541. Female Hoodlum. What big matter? Ling Han asked. A heaven-grade alchemist obtained the inheritance of the 12 courts, and found out the location of an immortal's depository. Would that be considered a big matter? Ing Hong countered. Ling Han laughed drily and said, "This joke is really not the slightest bit funny." "Then, let's talk about a big thing that happened in the Middle State," Ing Hong said seriously. "A month ago, a mystery realm opened in the Middle State, and a great many obtained rewards from within.
There were also a great many new people who have never been heard of before that appeared all of a sudden and became famous overnight.
Oh, what mystery realm? Ling Han asked carelessly. As for whatever prodigies had appeared, he could care less.
In a battle between himself and an opponent of the same cultivation, he was confident that he would not lose to anyone.
The Sky Arena. Ing Hong answered. What kind of mystery realm is that? Ling Han had not heard of it before. The heavens would pick a large number of people to enter the mystery realm, wherein they would be divided into 18 teams. They would overcome various obstacles, and the final surviving teams would participate in a battle to the death. The team that comes out alive would obtain astounding rewards, and it may even be possible that one's cultivation could be raised directly by 2 or 3 cultivation tiers, Ing Hong said. Ling Han was astounded. So awesome, it could actually directly increase one's cultivation by 2 or 3 cultivation tiers. But he immediately shook his head. A real genius wouldn't want to succeed in a single leap like that, because cultivation needed to be polished.
After all, the foundations of too rapid cultivation would not be sturdy. Even if it would not affect the progress of cultivation, a cultivator like that might not be able to be called an elite among his peers of the same cultivation level. There should have been some who had obtained some kind of good stuff from the mystery realm. On this trip to the headquarters of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, there must be people who would plan to auction off some treasures that they themselves cannot make use of, Ing Hong continued. Only at this point did Ling Han look interested. He nodded and said, in that case it would be worth going. According to rumors, there are some rookies who have very fierce impetus. I am really worried that they would be poached by branches from the other regions. Then, in the martial arts competition, we wouldn't be at much of an advantage, Ing Hong said, worried. Oh, stronger than Xianer?
Ling Han was shocked. Since recovering from the wound to her divine sense, Zhu Xian'er's power had improved very rapidly and drastically. Firstly, because she received a rebound, and secondly, Ling Han had given her a great many alchemical pills, as well as natural treasures like flesh from great demons, spiritual liquid, and the like. The progress of her cultivation was indescribably rapid.
Ing Hong nodded gravely and said, very, very strong. In the flower blossom tier, there are 2 persons who have even advanced to the high stage 1 of the flower blossom tier, and are qualified to issue a challenge to such rulers of geniuses like the second greatest swordsman.
They were on the same level as Yao Huiyu. At this point, Ling Han, too, wore a cautious expression. In a battle between equals, he had confidence that he could emerge victorious over Yao Huiyu, but if there was a gap of 4 to 5 cultivation levels, then the result would be uncertain. After all, not only was Yao Huiyu a super genius, he also came from an ancient great sect, so he must have had a great many powerful trump cards under his sleeve. Though they had battled previously, Ling Han firstly had relied on the thunder battle armor, and secondly, Yao Huiyu had limited himself to 3 moves. In the end, he made an all-out effort for his 3rd move, but it coincidentally happened to be the mysterious 3000, which was the reason why Ling Han could break through his attack. Thus, that battle was definitely not a display of Yao Huiyu's real prowess. Who are these rookies? Ling Han asked. Xia Yuran, Ji Wenshan, Fei Hong, Wu Huayun, Lang Wuxian. Ing Hong counted them off on her fingers, knowing them like the back of her hand. Ling Han frowned and asked, these are all flower blossom tier cultivators. All indeed. All below 30 years old. All below. Ling Han was shaken. The rookies of this era were really very powerful. In his last life, most probably, only he, the Sword Emperor, and the others managed to break through to the flower blossom tier before 30, which was a pitifully small number. However, in this lifetime, innumerable geniuses appeared as if they were pouring out from a knocked-over vessel. No, that was not right. It wasn't that the geniuses of this era were more powerful, but rather because the environment for martial arts in this lifetime was really too good. Various mystery realms opened, which allowed cultivators to quickly improve their cultivation. Additionally, the changes to the spiritual qi in the environment gave rise to the appearance of more and more natural treasures, which led to the rapid development of martial arts. On such basis, there was naturally more geniuses who were stronger than before. He could not help but smile. To be able to exchange blows with countless geniuses, this was naturally extremely beneficial to improving his battle prowess. Furthermore, there was really nothing interesting about continuing to trample all over minor characters. I really want to battle with these people. Ling Han said pensively. Ha, I am sure that there are definitely a few among these people who would be taken in by the other branches to take part in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion tournament, so you will definitely get the chance to, Ing Hong said. Ling Han laughed and said, I only agreed to participate in the alchemy competition. If you want me to participate in the martial arts competition, okay, but you need to raise my pay. Hey. You were the one who said you wanted to battle with them. I am creating an opportunity for you. Ing Hong rolled her eyes. I've never seen anyone who would bite the hand that feeds them like you. All you think about is money. Ling Han shook his head and said, You've really proven yourself to be a businesswoman. It is obviously a matter in which you have the advantage, but you speak as if you're making a loss. Fine, whatever you like. If you want me to move, then let me see the level of your sincerity. Ing Hong gritted her teeth and asked, Would the sincerity of 100,000 double-star origin crystals be enough? Double-star origin crystals? I don't take that kind of trash. Ling Han said in disdain. He had already broken through to the flower blossom tier, and to him, double-star origin crystals were practically useless. 1,000 triple-star origin crystals. Ing Hong slapped a hand onto the table, and as if her flesh had been slived off, she wore a terribly pained expression. Nyo, do you think I look like a beggar? Ling Han turned and asked Hu Nyo. No. Hu Nyo was naturally on his side. He turned to Zhu Xian'er and asked, Xian'er, what do you think? Of course Big Brother Han doesn't look like one. Zhu Xian'er immediately replied sweetly. Ling Han turned to Helian Sun Shui, but without waiting for him to ask, this princess of the sea race immediately said, Ling Han is not a beggar. All right, she knew how to answer before being asked. Looks like her intelligence had improved considerably. Ling Han turned back around and said, You see, everyone said I don't look like a beggar, but why do you use the method of bestowing alms on beggars on me? Isn't that looking down on me? Ing Hong really wanted to throttle someone. Hey, who would use 1,000 triple-star origin crystals to bestow alms on beggars? She was the daughter of the pavilion master of one of the branches of Spirit Treasures Pavilion, so she was naturally a born businesswoman. Immediately, she declared shamelessly, Just 1,000, no more. If you want, I have one life here. Why not you just sleep with me then? With my identity, sleeping with me once would be more or less worth 1,000 triple-star origin crystals. If you sleep with me a few more times, you'd even have to pay me the balance. Ling Han was instantly defeated. In the face of this kind of female hoodlum, he really felt helpless, like he was trying to attack a porcupinino idea where he could hit. He sighed and asked, Does your family know that you're so shameless? I have big breasts, so what if I'm a little shameless? Ing Hong asked arrogantly. If the gods are displeased, then throw down a lightning bolt to strike me then. Hong. The moment she finished saying her words, a loud noise was immediately heard. It sounded like thunder, scaring the two horses into a panic, which caused the carriage to sway dangerously. Ing Hong could not help but turn pale. The gods were everywhere. She couldn't have been so unlucky that the gods really heard her, right? That's not right. There's someone fighting. Ling Han immediately shot out. Chapter 542. Two Great Geniuses. Ling Han shot out of the carriage and saw that there were two people currently engaged in a fierce battle in the sky not too far away. Since they could soar in the skies without external help, they had to be in the flower blossom tier at the very least. Since they were too far off, Ling Han was naturally unable to sense the two fighters' aura, and was thus unable to distinguish what their cultivation levels were. However, with his vision, a mere glance was enough to see clearly the two fighters' facial features. They both looked to be in their 20s, and were extremely young. This did not mean that they simply looked young, but that they were really young. Their blood and chi shot majestically skywards, displaying their amazing vitality. Hong. The two exchanged another blow. One wielded a saber, whereas the other held a sword. As their weapons slashed, 19 flashes of saber chi and sword chi swept out, as if they meant to tear apart the sky and earth itself in a very terrifying display. Ling Han was astonished. He had grasped 19 flashes of sword chi, but the two fighters in the skies were actually not the slightest bit inferior to him. That was too much nonsense, wasn't it? They had merely been traveling, and they were able to encounter such young elites of this level. However, his blood quickly boiled and battle intent soared, as if he, too, wanted to join in on the battle. Hong, hong, hong. In the skies, the two young elite cultivators used various magnificent techniques, their respective martial intents which could easily knock any cultivator in spiritual pedestal tier unconscious on full display. In the flower blossom tier, the divine flowers of martial arts had already bloomed, so cultivators were able to stimulate the spiritual chi in their surroundings to add on to their own attacks. Thus, their destructive power was absolutely terrifying. Even if they were battling in mid-air, the shock waves produced from their blows were still able to easily slice apart cliffs, as if the end of the world was descending. Pong, a rock cliff collapsed, and coincidentally happened to fall right above Ling Han's head. With a wave of his sword, the cliff was cut into two halves, which separated right above his head and fell on both sides. Pang pang. Due to the terrifying impact, the ground instantly shook like a carpet. Ling Han instantly found a reason for him to join in on the battle. So he too flew skywards and shouted loudly, "Hey, you two brats, you actually dared to throw rocks at me. Watch my sword." His sword brandished in a strike that headed towards the two fighters. The two had just been embroiled in a fierce battle and had not imagined that a third person would interfere in their battle, and could not help but become furious. However, this strike of Ling Han was overwhelmingly powerful, and they could not choose to do anything else but parry. They both temporarily put aside their own battle and turned to parry Ling Han's strike. Pang! Now that the two geniuses had combined forces, their battle prowess was really too terrifying. Even a monster like Ling Han was forced backwards by the impact. However, Ling Han's battle intent was overflowing. These two fighters were both in the 7th layer of the flower blossom tier, a whole 5 layers higher than he who was in the 2nd layer of the flower blossom tier. Yet there was not much of a gap between their respective battle prowess. Such opponents were too hard to find. How could he be willing to give up easily? He had finally gotten a pretext to join in, and would definitely not be willing to leave just like that. With a loud shout, he used the ghostly immortal steps and displayed the desolate hell sword technique. That was the final move, and as if he himself had transformed into an Ashura that had descended into hell, his killing intent scorched the skies. Hong, one was a swordsman, and was capable of stimulating endless flames, whereas the other wielded a saber that shone with multiple flashes of golden light in a ferocious display. Either one of these two great geniuses was capable of sweeping aside all opponents in the flower blossom tier alone, and now that the two of them had joined forces, they were even more frightening. Even as strong as Ling Han was, he was being oppressed. However, this made him even more excited. In the midst of using ghostly immortal steps, the desolate hell sword did not even move into a defensive stance, but rather moved into increasingly fiercer attacks. At first, the two young men had intended to kill Ling Han swiftly before returning to their battle, but as the battle continued, their battle intent was stirred up as well. Not only did they put in their all into the battle, their alliance had collapsed as well, and the battle had completely evolved into a battle royale between the three of them. They were all geniuses, confident that they were invincible against anyone of the same cultivation level. As a result, they were all disdainful of joining forces with another to defeat another elite cultivator who was worth battling. In the skies, the battle continued heatedly. Fire rained, and flashes of golden light floated downwards as if they intended to destroy the world. Zhu Xian'er opened up a defensive shield. Though she was only in the 7th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, she was more than adequate if she only had to withstand the shockwaves produced from a battle between flower blossom tier cultivators. As Hunyo watched, she became more and more excited, and continued to bare her teeth endlessly as if she, too, wanted to join in on the battle. Meanwhile, Helian Sun Shui wore an alarmed expression, and asked, would Ling Han get injured? Haha, it would be his fault even if he did. Who asked him to charge in? Ing Hong said, rejoicing in the fact that Ling Han was in trouble. You're a bad person. Helian Sun Shui exclaimed, pouting. I have big breasts, so I can be bad. Ing Hong placed her hands on her hips in front of Helian Sun Shui and even purposely stuck out her chest, making even Helian Sun Shui feel embarrassed. How could this woman be such a hoodlum? Ha 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 ha. In the skies, the three fighters broke out laughing and simultaneously stopped attacking. How delightful! What fun! The swordsman declared. I am Fei Hong. Could I be so bold to ask how I should address you, brother? So he was Fei Hong, a new super genius that had risen just recently. He had just heard about him from Ying Hong just now. No wonder. How could there be so many geniuses in this world that they would encounter such a genius so easily? I am Han Lin, Ling Han answered, smiling. Looking at the saber wielder, he asked, and this is?
Lang Wu Xin, this man answered a bit coolly, appearing to be quite cold in temperament. But merely from how he looked like when he was battling, one could tell that the moment this person's blood heated up, he was a very frightening person to see. I have actually not heard of Brother Han's name.
Fei Hong looked surprised. A genius like Brother Han should be well known. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, that's right. I was just about to head to the middle state to amaze the world in a single brilliant feat. Fei Hong laughed alongside him, whereas Lang Wu Xian remained expressionless as if he was made out of wood. Rather than Wu Xian, he should go by the name of Wu Xiaofan.
The two of you should have come from the middle state. Yet why have you come all the way here?
Ling Han asked. I had agreed on a battle with this guy. After half a month of battling, we had unwittingly fought all the way here, Fei Hong answered, grinning. They had fought all the way from the middle state to the north region? These two had really gone crazy in their fighting then.
Come, let's drink.
Ling Han's generosity was stirred up.
He invited the both of them onto their carriage, wherein he drew out the ingredients from the Black Tower as well as the herbal wine that had been produced from the various spiritual herbs that had been cultivated inside the Black Tower.
It was not only a strong wine, but very nutritious as well. If a cultivator drank normal wine, it had practically no effect. This wine, though, was completely different. It was definitely strong enough. Merely after drinking one cup, Fei Hong was glowing with health and vigor, and Lang Wu Xian could not help but relax his wooden expression as if he had finally gained some life. As they continued to enjoy their wine, they chatted about all the young heroes of the world. Brother Han, so you are a representative in the Spiritual Treasures Pavilion tournament. Then you'd have to be careful. I heard that Shenyuan Zi Guang will also be a battle representative for the South region. After a few cups of wine, Fei Hong already had his arm around Ling Han's shoulder, declaring them to be brothers. Is he very powerful? Ling Han asked. He had not mentioned that he was actually taking part in the alchemy competition part of the tournament. Of course, on a whim, he could consider taking part in the martial arts competition as well. Very powerful, Lang Wu Xin suddenly spoke up, and declared his judgment with utter seriousness. I am no match for him. Ling Han was astonished. Though Lang Wu Xian didn't speak much, this type of person either chose not to speak at all or hit the mark with a single word. Even he judged himself to be unequal to Shenyuan Zi Guang, which proved that the latter was indeed very strong. Chapter 543. Eye of Heavenly Tao. Previously, in the battle royale between the three of them, there was practically no difference in their battle prowess. Of course, Ling Han had not used ultimate techniques like the mysterious 3000, but he was sure that these two must have held their punches as well. There were some secret techniques that would only be used in a life-or-death situation. Yet Lang Wu Xian admitted honestly that he was no match for Shenyuan Zi Guang, which showed that not only was the latter stronger, he was stronger by a significant degree, which was the only reason that a proud man like Lang Wu Xian would admit his inferiority. That guy is indeed very powerful, Fei Hong agreed with a nod. However, he has the advantage in cultivation level as he is already in the 9th layer of the flower blossom tier. If we battled on the same cultivation level, I am confident that I will not lose to him. No, even if we fought on the same cultivation level, we are no match against him, either. Lang Wu Xian shook his head in disagreement. You have never fought him before, Fei Hong declared defiantly. We won't win unless we are able to break through our own limitations. Otherwise, if we merely advance another few cultivation layers, it would still be insufficient to overcome the gap in battle prowess that stands between us and him. Han Lin, on the other hand, may be qualified to fight with Shenyuan Zi Guang, but only when the two of you are on the same cultivation level. Otherwise, the result will still be defeat, Lang Wu Xian said with absolute certainty. This time, Fei Hong yielded. He said, Brother Han is only in the 2nd layer of the flower blossom tier yet is already able to battle us to a tie. Indeed, his battle prowess is more outstanding than ours. This also tells us that we should never be complacent.
We had originally thought that we had already polished our battle prowess sufficiently, yet had never thought that there would be another person stronger.
Brother Han is even more of a monster than we are. Could Shenyuan Ziguang come from some ancient great sect that he's so strong? Ling Han felt slight disbelief. His origins are mysterious. No one knows his true history. However, I have fought him before, and his bloodline is very powerful. It granted him a power upgrade of 3 battle stars, Lang Wu Xin said in a tone of absolute certainty. 3 stars. One shouldn't underestimate these 3 stars of battle prowess. For geniuses like them, they had more or less advanced their battle prowess to the limit, and the ability to add another 3 battle stars to this maximum level would naturally be enough to turn the tables around in any battle. Lang Wu Xin paused, then continued. If he did not use his bloodline ability, and fought with me on the same cultivation level, his battle prowess should be similar to mine. But if he did compound his battle prowess with his bloodline, then he is more powerful than I. Ling Han nodded. There were really too many capable people in this world. He definitely could not allow himself to fall into a state of self-satisfaction. Being stagnant and not moving forwards would be equivalent to an endless decline.
Brother Han, let us meet once more in the middle state.
When Fei Hong and Lang Wu Xian had drunk to their heart's content, they bade Ling Han farewell. After this battle with you, we feel tremendous pressure. We need to find a dangerous spot to have a good bloody battle. If we don't die, our battle prowess would be greatly improved, and then we'll find you again. Let us learn from each other once more. Good. Ling Han agreed gladly. Geniuses were never as grand as what the masses imagined them to be. What genius had gotten to the level they were at without risking their lives in the process? The 2 men took to the skies, but they both left in a different direction. Most probably, the only beings that could push them to the limit would have to be in the spiritual infant tier. Either they would choose to trifle with demonic beasts of this level or powerful human cultivators, all to squeeze out their own potential through a life-or-death battle, raising their own cultivation and battle prowess. AI. Ing Hong immediately sighed. I had initially thought that we had a high chance of winning in the martial arts competition, but never thought that there would suddenly appear so many monsters. Really, I'm about to die of fury. Can't you people appear a year later?
Ling Han laughed loudly and said, I'll recommend you an elite cultivator.
I guarantee that Shenyuan Ziguang whatever would only be swept aside in the wake. Oh, you won't say it's you, right? Ing Hong looked at him with an expression filled with doubt. I've already told you, I can only afford to pay you 1,000 triple-star origin crystals in wages. If you want any more, then I can only pay you with my body. Get lost. Ling Han rolled his eyes. The elite cultivator that I'm referring to is her. He pointed at Helian Sun Shui. Pooh. Ing Hong instantly choked on her own saliva. What kind of joke was that? Helian Sun Shui, too, looked shy and bashful, hiding herself behind Ling Han. Her 2 slender hands grasped tightly onto the corner of Ling Han's shirt as if she was really scared that Ling Han would really sell her off. Ling Han sighed. This was the real pro at showing off. After another few days, they reached the well-known region barrier. It was a transparent barrier so high its top was hidden in clouds. Everyone guessed that this barrier had been created by an array, but no one had ever found any formation's eyes. Thus, this was a mere guess. The region barrier separated the middle state and the other 4 great regions, as if separating the landmass into 5 boxes.
It also allowed for the fact that the martial arts level in every region was completely different.
The region barrier did not have the slightest effect on the common people, but the stronger one's power, the more one would be affected. If a spiritual infant tier cultivator passed through, not only would his cultivation level experience a temporary drop, his life source itself would be considerably decreased. Thus, if one wanted to traverse the world, it was best to do so as early as possible. The best cultivation level was the flower blossom tier. Not only did one not have to fear being harmed by the region barrier, one's ability would also be strong enough for self-defense. The region barrier stretched up into the skies as if there was no end to it. What is at the end of the skies? Ling Han asked. The end of the skies? Maybe the legendary realm of immortals, Ing Hong answered. Ling Han shook his head. In his last life, he had once flew up into the skies continuously, but very soon encountered a terrifyingly strong wind that not even a heaven-tier cultivator could withstand.
He could only choose to helplessly give up the idea of wanting to see what lay at the end of the skies. "One day, I will definitely sever this sky, and see clearly for myself," he declared grandly. Shattering void tear cultivators shattered the void and became immortals. Did that mean to shatter apart something like the end of the sky? Wang! All of a sudden, the fair weather immediately changed. It actually became darkened abruptly before a dark cloud rapidly appeared, with terrifying lightning flashing within. Thunder tribulation. That couldn't be, right? How could a flower blossom tear cultivator actually attract a calamity of thunder? Aside from alchemical calamities, it was rumored that only when one broke through to the shattering void tear would one incite a calamity of thunder. Within the dark clouds, an incredibly bizarre sight was seen. A single eye appeared. It was as gigantic as a mountain, and was staring down at where Ling Han and the others were standing. Ling Han was absolutely sure that the one this eye was focusing on was himself. And even if he had a sliver of divine sense of heaven tier, at this moment, he still felt the urge to flee inside the Black Tower. The pressure was too terrifying, making him feel as if his soul itself was about to explode. However, he did not want to flee. This eye did not have any killing intent and only held endless disdain, as if it was mocking him. The Eye of Heavenly Tao. Ling Han was internally shocked. He had read from ancient scrolls before that if a mortal said something rebellious, or did something that could possibly affect the balance of the world, the Eye of Heavenly Tao would appear as a warning or even directly kill the offender. Of course, it was not as if any random person cursing would incite the appearance of the Eye of Heavenly Tao. That person had to indeed have the potential to shake the universal balance of the world. Only then would the Eye of Heavenly Tao appear. Who knew? It might even make a direct move to erase a factor that could possibly be a liability to itself in the future. Could it be that when he said he wanted to sever the skies one day, he had actually given a scare to the world? Furthermore, there was a possibility that he could succeed in future. Really, what an optimistic opinion of him. Ugly, get lost, Nyo doesn't like you. Nyo jumped up onto the roof of the carriage with her hands on her hips, looking very fierce. When the Eye of Heavenly Tao turned to look at Nyo, it was very obvious that slight fear actually appeared in its gaze. Suddenly, the dark clouds turned and flipped, covering the eyeball before quickly disappearing altogether. When the dark cloud had completely dispersed, the Eye of Heavenly Tao had also disappeared. Fuck. Was it really chased off by Nyo's scolding? Chapter 544. A young man as strong as the son of a god. Nyo looked very pleased with herself. She had absolutely no idea what kind of astonishing feat she had just accomplished, but she was still a child after all, so she was naturally Tsundra one. Meanwhile, Ling Han was astounded. That was the Eye of Heavenly Tao. In the ancient tales, the Eye of Heavenly Tao was the guardian of the balance of this world, and was also able to command the power of an entire realm. Why would those beings as strong as immortals still have their cultivation suppressed upon entering the lower realm and could only use power on the level of the shattering void tier? If they surpassed that allowed level, why would they be forcibly expelled? That was because of the Eye of Heavenly Tao. It guarded the order, and could directly make use of the rules of this realm so that no one would be able to transcend the rules. Yet, such a powerful existence was actually chased off by Nyo's scolding. Ling Han shook his head. It did not look like it was chased off by a scolding, but looked more like it had been scared off. The little girl was so awesome. Ling Han knew that she possessed a human-like spirit base inside her that was very terrifying, capable of even easily destroying his divine sense of the heaven tier. But he was only on the level of the heaven tier. A shattering void tier cultivator would be able to do the same easily. Meanwhile, the Eye of Heavenly Tao was even more powerful. Just now, it had only stared at him for a moment, and Ling Han felt as if his divine sense was about to shatter. Yet Nyo actually scared off the Eye of Heavenly Tao. Damn, being capable of scaring off the strongest existence of this realm, what kind of concept was that? One had to understand that even if immortals descended, they would be forcibly suppressed, and with this comparison in mind, how strong would that human-like spirit base inside Nyo have to be? Was that really just a spirit base? Ling Han could not help but worry. If that spirit base was merely asleep, and then awoke one day and completely took over Nyo's body, what would happen next? In the face of that kind of existence,
Would Hu Nyo's spirit be able to stand strong?
What freaky thing was that?
Ying Hong gasped uncontrollably. Too terrifying. She had directly been scared into flopping into a sitting position on the ground. She was completely covered with cold sweat.
The pressure exerted by the Eye of Heavenly Tao had surpassed even immortals, and at least within this realm, it was the most powerful existence.
Ling Han pondered for a moment, then replied, "If I have not guessed wrongly, that is the Eye of Heavenly Tao."
Heavenly Tao actually has an eye?
Zhu Xianer asked curiously. Perhaps. Ling Han was not too sure himself. After all, the Eye of Heavenly Tao was merely a myth. Perhaps it had a different name.
What unforgivable crime did you commit that you would even attract the attention of the Eye of Heavenly Tao?
Ying Hong was on the verge of freaking out. She had absolutely no desire to be eliminated.
Ling Han said with utter seriousness, "How could it be possible that an honest, trustworthy, good and kind young man like me would do something unforgivable?"
Please do not slander me. Ying Hong could only roll her eyes like mad at his retort. After this little interlude, none of them mentioned the Eye of Heavenly Tao again. Thankfully, though the two coachmen had also been scared out of their wits, they came back to themselves after a moment's rest. The two steeds had also recovered, and they could continue on their journey. When they passed through the region barrier, a very strange feeling arose, but before Ling Han could make any sense of it, they had already passed through and officially entered the middle state. Ling Han was surprised. This middle state was indeed very different.
The moment he entered, he could feel that the spiritual qi here was denser, as if there was something additional in the air that was more advantageous to the progress of martial arts.
It was indeed reasonable that the martial arts level in the middle state was higher. The carriage rocked and swayed, continuing to advance towards Million Treasure City. They did not encounter any more danger on their way, because the flag of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion was raised on the carriage. This made a great number of thieves and bandits take the initiative to back off, not daring to have any thoughts about robbing their carriage. This was also proof of the power of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. Its name was well known, so even if it was only a lone carriage, no one dared to rob them. After about a month, the carriage finally arrived in Million Treasure City.
This was where the headquarters of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion was, and at the same time, was also where the headquarters of the Alchemist Society was located. It was as if the two were conjoined babies. Where one was, the other was not far away. But it was understandable. High-grade spiritual pills occupied the greatest share of the auction items in Spirit Treasures Pavilion, and the Alchemist Society also needed the Spirit Treasures Pavilion to auction off their alchemical pills in order to maximize their profits. Thus, the two parties have always maintained a close working partnership. The group of 5 disembarked from the carriage and, guided by Ying Hong, went off to find accommodations. The Spiritual Treasures Pavilion was a towering building. The foundation of the building was about 2,000 meters high, which was tall enough that one could only look up at it. Furthermore, this palace-like building was incredibly huge. It really held up the facade, and was qualified to be the real headquarters of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. And this was only the facade of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion that they used as a venue for their auctions. Behind it, there was another massive group of buildings used to accommodate the countless number of people belonging to the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. The majority of these people made up the security detail. If it did not possess a very strong power, how could the Spirit Treasures Pavilion be able to deter the world, and cause any potential thief to falter at the idea of robbery merely upon seeing the flag of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion? A staircase extended towards that higher level. It was made of white jade, and from afar, the light reflected off it made it seem like a shining cloud. This made it seem as if this place was sitting upon the summit of clouds, making it look even more magnificent and grander. With Ying Hong's guidance, they walked up the stairs. They had only walked halfway when they saw someone walking out of the palace. In truth, coming to and fro was a very normal thing. However, this person's aura was too powerful. Divine light actually encircled his body, and with every step he took, brilliant light would shine. It was as if the son of a god was out, as he possessed an astounding aura. All the way, everyone could not help but stand still and admire this young man that possessed such an astounding aura. They wanted nothing more than to kneel down in obeisance and worship him. This young man was tall and slender. His hair was black and thick, with skin like the best quality jade, smooth and fair. He was also extremely handsome.
He most probably had to stand there and it would be enough to make countless women fall for him. He was shockingly in the flower blossom tier, and was a top cultivator at the 9th layer. With every breath he took, it was as if the whole world resonated with him. Ling Han was astonished. This young man's vitality was strong and he was incredibly young. Furthermore, this young man was shockingly already in the 9th layer of the flower blossom tier. This kind of talent was really quite scary. This young man walked down step by step, his aura seeming as if it was natural, leaving one only to feel endless reverence in his wake. He soon passed by Ling Han's group, but he had only taken 2 steps when he suddenly stood still. Abruptly he chased over, his eyes focused on Helian Sun Shui, holding such concentration as if he was staring at his beloved lover. "Hey, you're blocking the way," Ling Han said. "Get lost." This young man directly raised his hand in a slap, filled with condescending forcefulness. Ling Han gave a cold humph. It was too late to draw his sword, so he threw out a punch of his own to parry. War Elephant Fist was out in full display. 17 silver images of dragons appeared, that rolled towards the young man. His sword chi had increased to 19 flashes, so his grasp of the art of fist techniques had also risen correspondingly. The young man exclaimed in surprise. He had obviously underestimated Ling Han's ability, yet he did not take it to heart. His right hand merely turned over and the power behind this palm strike instantly spiked. Pang! In truth, the palm and fist did not come into contact, but the 2 young men's origin power had collided, which instantly created a powerful impact. The shock wave that was released was filled with destructive ability, and instantly, there appeared multiple cracks upon the stone steps. Tang tang tang. Ling Han stepped back continuously, and only regained his balance after he had taken a consecutive 17 steps backwards. Chapter 545. Shenyuan Zi Guang. An expression of shock finally appeared on the young man's face. He turned to look seriously at Ling Han and said, "You actually managed to block my strike? Not bad, not bad. Who are you? You are qualified enough for me to know your name." "Are you retarded?" Ling Han asked coldly. Did this young man really think that he was the king of the world and everything revolved around him? "How dare you!" The young man was instantly furious, and shot out another palm strike. Immediately, a total of 23 flaming tigers appeared and pounced towards Ling Han. Every single fiery tiger was extremely scary and strong enough to subdue any normal cultivator in the 9th layer of the flower blossoming tier. The combined appearance of these 23 tigers was practically a horrifying sight. 23 flashes of qi. Ling Han could not help but feel surprised. He had only grasped 19 flashes of sword qi, and in terms of fist qi, his advancement was obviously even more behind. However, he merely gave a cold humph and faced the oncoming attack with fists raised, striking out with 17 silvery dragon images. Pang 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 pang. The dragon images and the tigers of fire collided and tore at each other. It was apparent that the flaming tigers had the upper hand. Merely 13 of them could stand against these 17 dragon images, and the remaining 10 continued on their fiery course to Ling Han. Ling Han used the ghostly immortal steps and managed to successfully dodge this attack. A powerful fighting spirit burnt in his eyes and he shouted, "Take one more punch from me!" He shot out another punch, but this time, he inserted an ancient bone pattern, and instantly, his martial intent grew inexplicably brilliant. The power of the 17 dragon images increased several times and flew at the young man in a counterattack. Interesting. The young man waved out a palm strike and again, 23 fiery tigers pounced. Pang! This time, the 17 dragon images actually stopped 17 fiery tigers in their path, but there were still another 6 flaming tigers that continued to pounce towards Ling Han. There was nothing that could be done. This young man had higher comprehension in martial arts than Ling Han, or at least that was the case in terms of qi. In addition to the fact that he had higher cultivation, it was only natural that he would have the upper hand in this exchange. This was something that Ling Han could do nothing about. Most importantly, he was also a genius, and furthermore, a super genius. Ling Han gave a loud howl, and with ghostly immortal steps, flashed right in front of his opponent, intending to have a short-distance battle with the latter. He had already formed Body of Iron Sheet, and added with the fact that his 9 Dragons Tyrant body art had also advanced to the Flower Blossom tier,
In any short-distance fight, he was definitely the best in the same tier. Unless his opponent was also similarly monstrous, and had cultivated some super body art that allowed him not to only have terrifying physical strength, but also an incomparably tough physique. Using the mysterious movements of the ghostly immortal steps, Ling Han successfully flashed right in front of that young man and shot out a punch at him. "Where did you get the confidence to have a close-up battle with me?" The young man smirked and shot out a palm strike to parry Ling Han's attack at an overwhelmingly fast speed. Usually, most cultivators would avoid close-up battles because what they cultivated was origin power, so most were not physically tough. In an instant, a cultivator could shoot out 10 or even 20 flashes of origin power, but without enough physical strength, would he be able to deliver 10 or even 20 strikes in an instant? As long as enough distance was maintained, then a cultivator needed only turn over his hand, or wave his sword a few times, and he would be able to injure his enemy from afar. Would the enemy fleeing with a single leap be faster or he, who only needed to raise his hand? However, in a close-up battle, raising a hand and turning over his palm would become an extreme luxury. There was a saying that said, "The whip is too short to reach," but if the whip was too long, it would also become very inflexible when used. Yet this young man was actually skilled at close-up battles, as his parrying palm strike was very well practiced, and fully displayed his skill. This meant that this young man definitely had a strong physique. Ling Han's battle-intent soared. With a loud howl, he began a fierce battle with the young man. Pang pang pang. They both struck extremely quick short-distance blows. There were not many flashy moves, merely the display of martial intent and the glowing of intricate patterns that endlessly shattered before reforming again in a continuous cycle. In this battle, the two of them actually came to a tie. Ling Han's physique was undoubtedly stronger. That was something that had been refined through the indestructible Heaven Scroll. Furthermore, with his cultivation of the 9 Dragons Tyrant body art, his physical strength was similarly terrifying. The young man's physique was inferior to Ling Han's, and so was his physical strength. However, his stronger origin power had compensated for this disadvantage. "I've really underestimated you," the young man declared coldly. Killing intent flashed in his eyes, and pang! A terrifying aura spread out from his body and transformed into 1,000 flaming blades that shot towards Ling Han. Even if Ling Han had formed the body of iron sheet, wherein his physique was as tough as precious metals of the same level, he still felt dread. He could not help but retreat, and extend the distance between the two of them. "Ha ha ha ha, within 10 moves, I will make you bow down in front of me." The young man laughed loudly, delivering several palm strikes in quick succession like he was an ultimate existence capable of splitting apart the skies and cleaving the ground. His battle prowess instantly soared to a whole new level. Unless the level of one's physical strength had surpassed the level of one's origin power, the smart move was of course to maintain distance. However, there was practically no one on this plane that had physical strength that surpassed his origin power. The young man was very smart. Furthermore, he might be arrogant, but he was not an idiot. Though he had previously expressed his disdain towards Ling Han, he had absolutely no intention of fighting with Ling Han in a close-up battle, which was not his strongest area, again. For those cultivating origin power, it was natural to maintain distance with one's opponent so as to throw out martial arts techniques as much as one liked. Ling Han was being suppressed, but it did not mean that he did not have the ability to turn the situation around. He was most skilled at sword techniques, but he did not draw the demon birth sword, nor did he use the mysterious 3000. These were his trump cards. Moreover, this was the middle state, and who knew if someone would recognize the mysterious 3000 and lead to the old monsters from the Heaven Sword sect being drawn out. "Stop!" A cold humph was heard, and a displeased voice came from the palace above them. "What do you two take this place for that could allow you two to do as you like here?" This deep rebuke was filled with austerity, and Ling Han and the young man immediately stopped moving at the same time. Being proud depended on the venue. Otherwise, that would not be pride you were showing, but idiocy. The person who had rebuked them had to at least be in the deity transformation tier, and no matter how monstrous Ling Han and that young man were, against such a presence, their only fate was to be suppressed and subdued. Whoever disobeyed would be seeking a beating, and Ling Han and his opponent obviously did not want to be thrashed. The young man was still very arrogant. After slanting a look at Ling Han, he no longer paid him any attention, but instead turned to look at Hellion Sun Shui and said, "I am Shenyuan Zi Guang. I fancy you, so be my woman." So he was Shenyuan Zi Guang.
No wonder he was so strong. Hellion Sun Shui hurriedly ducked behind Ling Han before poking out her beautiful face and sticking out her tongue at Shenyuan Ziguang. She only felt that this person was baffling and detestable. Meanwhile, Ling Han shot a pitying look at Shenyuan Ziguang. This guy had too favorable an opinion about himself, yet had completely no idea that this adorable woman was actually in the heaven tier. Though she was currently amnesiac, one day, her memory would definitely return, and by then, he'd be dead meat. When Shenyuan Ziguang saw this, his gaze directed at Ling Han unconsciously became filled with a powerful killing intent. The woman that he fancied actually was so intimate with another man? He could not tolerate this and definitely had to kill the man in question. If not, the knot in his heart would never be erased. Once you leave here, you will be a dead man, he said, pointing at Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "All right. Then you can just spend the rest of your life waiting here for me." Shenyuan Ziguang was rendered speechless. He had not thought that Ling Han would be so shameless. He gave a humph then said, "I will wait for you." Chapter 546. Searching for the Boundless Mountain. Shenyuan Ziguang turned around to leave, but before he had taken more than a few steps, he heard Ling Han mumble softly, "Idiot." He then could not help but turn back round, his gaze icy, and snapped, "What did you say?" "Oh, I said you were an idiot. I didn't think that you actually know yourself so well, and knew that I was calling you," Ling Han replied, smiling. Instantly, Shenyuan Ziguang was enraged, his killing intent boiling and rising above his head, transforming into tongues of flames. Images of real dragons and real phoenixes, Byako and Zhenbu appeared, indicating the terrifying ability that this young man possessed. He really was very powerful. Perhaps he might not be inferior even to the Sword Emperor and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden years ago. "Once you leave this place, I will definitely behead you," he declared coldly, his tone filled with determination. "Then you just have to wait patiently, idiot. Wait for my mood to improve, and that will be when I will take your life," Ling Han said lazily. As someone who had once been an elite cultivator of the heaven tier in his last life, no matter how powerful this generation of youths were, it was still impossible for him to look upon them seriously as true opponents. In his eyes, the people that he needed to surpass were the Sword Emperor, the Setting Sun Saber Emperor, and others who had already entered into the realm of immortals if they really had entered it, that was. Shenyuan Ziguang did not continue to argue with Ling Han as that was completely meaningless and merely a waste of time. With a humph and a flourish of his robes, he left. This time, Ling Han did not mutter anything else. He was wondering if he should pick something like Shenyuan Ziguang's hair and throw it into the vial of curses to curse him. However, once one had reached the flower blossom tier, they had already left behind their mortal coil and would no longer have any hair fall. They could also freely control the growth of their fingernails. Only demonic beasts would continue to grow as the path they took was one of physical cultivation. Therefore, it was quite a difficult feat to get physical tissue from a flower blossom tier cultivator. Forget it. Shenyuan Ziguang was only in the 9th layer of the flower blossom tier. Killing him would not be anything too difficult to accomplish once Ling Han raised his cultivation by a few more levels. "Let's go and get your accommodations arranged," Ing Hong said, a hint of a smile in her expression. She was obviously very pleased to see a conflict arise between Ling Han and Shenyuan Ziguang. That way, the chance of Ling Han putting his full effort into assisting her would be even higher. "Is it really appropriate for you to take so much delight in the misfortune of others?" Ling Han teased. "I want to, and what can you do about it?" Ing Hong stuck out her breasts. "How vulgar," Ling Han said disdainfully. The 5 of them entered into the Spirit Treasures Pavilion as Ing Hong showed proof of her identity. Afterwards, they were then invited into the massive building complex behind the Great Hall. However, the North Region had the weakest martial arts level, and as a result, the North Region branch of Spirit Treasures Pavilion naturally had the lowest status here. In this place, Ing Hong's aura was obviously weaker. "Hang. Wait until I get the first place in this tournament. We'll see what else you all have to say." She fumed. "Big Brother Han, that Shenyuan Ziguang indeed has extraordinary power. You definitely must not be careless," Zhu Xian'er said softly to Ling Han. Ling Han nodded and said, "Don't worry. I will not fear anyone, But I will not underestimate any genius, either. Honestly speaking, his current power is indeed above mine, but if he wants to kill me, that would still be a fantasy. He was absolutely certain of this fact. He had too many trump cards up his sleeve. Oh right, let me ask you something, Ling Han asked Ing Hong. Do you know of the Boundless Mountain? What mountain? Ing Hong asked blankly. Boundless Mountain. TSK, I only lived in the Middle State for a few years. Moreover, the Middle State is such a big place, so how could I know where the Boundless Mountain is? Just hold on, I'll find someone and ask around for you. Ing Hong bustled away, but after a while, she again bustled back and said, You damn brat, are you playing around with me? I've asked a great many people, but none has ever heard of such a mountain. Ling Han frowned. After 10,000 years, it was natural that there would be a change in the names of places, but here was the problem. The Middle State was such a huge place, so how could he possibly travel to check every single mountain? Hey, I'm talking to you. Are you playing around with me? Ing Hong asked fiercely. Take care of how you speak. Otherwise, no one would dare to marry you. Ling Han warned. Hey, I have huge breasts, so if I wanted to marry, it'd be a piece of cake. Ing Hong snorted. You all just stay here for the moment. Oh, and it'd be best to try to avoid conflict with Shenyuan Zi Guang. AI, the South region actually hired such a monster. Looks like we won't be able to get many marks for the martial arts competition. Ling Han laughed and said, I have a way. What way? You think of a way to get hold of Shenyuan Zi Guang's hair, and I'll make a voodoo doll to curse him. I guarantee his ability would decline greatly, and he would be no match for Xian Er, Ling Han suggested with a smile. Tisk. Ing Hong rolled her eyes. This brat was playing with her again. I'm leaving. You guys can rest for a while. However, take it easy. After all, there is only a month left until the tournament, so don't ruin your bodies. Get lost. After Ing Hong left, the three girls found their respective rooms and deposited their baggage first, though they didn't really have much baggage. After all, they had the Black Tower, and everybody had a spatial ring too. Meanwhile, Ling Han sat down and continued to ponder the matter of the Boundless Mountain. In his last life, he had heard of the Boundless Mountain, but had never been there before. He only knew that such a place existed in the Middle State. Since that was the case, he could first find out where it was roughly located before slowly searching for the exact location. In the past, that was like fishing a needle from the sea, and now, it was like fishing a needle from a lake. Though it was still a very slow process, it was still better wandering aimlessly all over the entire Middle State. The guest rooms of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion were still of very high quality. Though there was a map of the Middle State in every room, it was not very detailed. Furthermore, only some bigger areas were marked, and great many small cities and mountain ranges didn't even have their names written. Ling Han tried his best to remember and compare, and finally tapped strongly on the map. It's here, Flying Blossom County. The Middle State was really too big, so it was divided again into 36 different counties. Flying Blossom County was one of them. However, even if the area had shrunk 36 times of the initial area, Flying Blossom County was still incredibly huge. At least, it was even bigger than the whole North region. If he wanted to find a specific mountain in this place, it would be difficult. Hopefully there aren't that many mountains in Flying Blossom County, Ling Han thought. It was not possible to make a close comparison on such a map, so Ling Han called over a servant and commanded him to buy a map of the Flying Blossom County. It was claimed that anything could be bought in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. As a result, even if he did not step out of here, he could still practically buy whatever he wanted. As long as he had the money for it. Soon enough, the servant returned. He said that there were a total of 3 grades of maps. Ordinary maps could be bought with mere money. The prices of mid-grade maps were in single-star origin crystals, whereas high-grade maps had to be bought with double-star origin crystals. The price of the last grade was as high as 10 origin crystals. Ling Han internally mocked the Spirit Treasures Pavilion for being ruthless, but still handed over 10 double-star origin crystals to the servant and told him to buy a high-grade map and return with it swiftly. After another while, the map was delivered into Ling Han's hands. Since a map could be sold for 10 origin crystals, what more when they were double-star origin crystals, it naturally had features worth such an exorbitant price.
Firstly, the material that the map was drawn on was very valuable.
It was drawn on the shell of a clear dragon-scaled tortoise, and had used a completely intact shell. The clear dragon-scaled tortoise was not some high-grade demonic beast, but its shell had a special ability: it could shrink or enlarge by will. It could stretch out to 100 meters at maximum, and it could shrink to a size as small as that of one's palm.
Because of this, the clear dragon-scaled tortoise had been greatly hunted, and by now, there were pitifully few left of this kind of demonic beast.
Ling Han walked into the courtyard.
With a wave of his hand, the tiny tortoise shell in his hand immediately enlarged, showing clearly all the mountains, plains, and rivers in detail.
Chapter 547. The Five Dragons and Twin Phoenixes. At the most critical moment, the Xiaofan left behind a message and claimed that all the secrets had been left at the Clear Harmony Palace Hall at the Boundless Mountain. He was very curious what she meant when she said that everything in the last few eons had been a lie. It was definitely not a moment of madness. Something that could make an ultimate elite cultivator of the Shattering Void tier willing to stand against her own clansmen, and even sacrifice herself merely to let the secret be known. The implications of this matter could possibly be terrifyingly colossal. Since they had come to the middle state, the search for the secret that the Xiaofan had left behind was naturally a matter of vital importance. The tortoise shell had enlarged to an area of about 100 meters and weighed a few thousand kilograms. But Ling Han's physical strength was really too tremendous. He could easily carry it single-handedly, without any need to use origin power at all.
Looking at the map, he tried his best to compare it with what he remembered and ruled out those mountains and plains that were definitely different.
There's still as many as 21 places. Ling Han shook his head.
He could only rule out so many, and there were still 21 mountain ranges that fitted the description he remembered from years ago. After all, he had never been there, and it was already quite a feat for him to be able to narrow down the scope to this extent.
Should we go now or wait until after the tournament? Ling Han pondered. The search for the Clear Harmony Palace Hall will definitely not take just 1 or 2 days. Since I have already agreed to help out in the tournament, then I naturally cannot break my word. All right, then we'll just go after the tournament is over. But do we really need to stay at the Spirit Treasures Pavilion for this whole month?
Oh right.
Ing Hong said that recently, there have been a great many who came out of the ancient historical sites, and it is highly possible that they possess some treasures that they themselves cannot use. They will then put it up for auction. So let's just go and check when the auction will begin. It was really a coincidence that there happened to be an auction this very night. Furthermore, it was the large-scale auction that would take place once every month. And after another month, the super auction that took place once a year would be held. This would be a very grand event with a great many treasures on auction. According to rumors, even elite cultivators of the deity transformation and the heaven tier would appear sometimes. However, only those with invitations could participate in the large-scale monthly auction. Thus, Ling Han sought out Ing Hong, and asked her to help him obtain an invitation. In his opinion, though Ing Hong's status in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion in the Middle State was not too high, it would not be a problem for her to get him an invitation. However, the result was surprising. Ing Hong actually returned empty-handed. I really am about to die of fury. The moment Ing Hong entered, her expression was filled with rage. That be Ing Chi actually dared to stop me. She didn't give me an invitation when I asked, but instead tried as much as possible to change the subject. Ling Han frowned and asked, "You couldn't get it?" Ing Hong sat at one side and said helplessly in displeasure, "I was stopped by that be She wouldn't give me one." "She has an enmity with you?" Ling Han asked. "You can say that." Ing Hong thought for a moment. "She's just jealous my breasts are larger than hers." Ho ho. Naturally, Ling Han did not believe her. "She is my third uncle's daughter, and my third uncle does not have a good relationship with my father." She told the truth. Ling Han gave an "oh," so it was a family feud. "This is not called taking a risk, but rather decreasing the risk," Ling Han said with a grin. He decided to appear with his original identity. Was a heaven-grade alchemist still unqualified to participate in the auction? And no matter what precious item he managed to buy at the auction, everyone would turn their focus on Ling Han instead of Han Lin. because the moment the auction concluded, Ling Han would disappear, and in his place, Han Lin would appear. TSK safe. Now that he had made his decision, Ling Han relaxed. At dinner, he drew out the various food ingredients in the Black Tower to share with the others, and everyone naturally feasted to their heart's content. That was especially the case for Helian Sun Shui and Ying Hong. Neither of them had eaten such delicacies too often, so both fought over food without any care for their image as genteel ladies. Moreover, they were no refined ladies in the first place. One had lost her memory, and the other frequently spoke about sleeping with her, so what reservations did they have? If you let me eat these every day, it'd be fine even if I have to throw myself at you, the shameless woman said. Ling Han naturally pretended he had heard nothing. He left the Spirit Treasures Pavilion and quietly removed the disguise he had on his face, regaining his original appearance. Then, he strode towards the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. This customer, our pavilion is not open to the public tonight, and will only receive special guests. He had just stepped onto the staircase when he was hailed down. Ling Han declared his identity directly, and said, "I am Ling Han, a heaven-grade alchemist. Can I be considered a special guest?" "What?" That person was obviously shocked by the words, heaven-grade alchemist, and after slight hesitation said quickly, "Please wait for a moment, honorable customer. Please allow me to immediately report to my superior." In a rush, he raced up the stairs. There was naturally another supervisor there to maintain order. At this point, the auction was about to begin, and a great many people passed him by. There were middle-aged people who walked with the gait of a soldier. There were also elderly people who had unfathomable depths, as well as young people with soaring vigor who carried themselves loftily. Naturally, they all had invitations, and were allowed in easily. Some of them saw Ling Han waiting at the foot of the staircase, and instantly looked disdainful. He wanted to go in without an invitation? Where had this beggar come from? "Hey, brat. How about if you kneel down and call me Lord, and I'll bring you in for a look around?" There would always be someone who had cheap mouth and would not take the fact that Ling Han was a flower blossom tear cultivator into consideration. In the Middle State, the flower blossom tear cultivators could not really be considered as all that powerful. Ling Han's eyes froze over. He asked, "With such a cheap mouth, are you not afraid you will attract trouble for your clan?" This was a profligate young master who looked to be in his 20s. He was merely in the spiritual ocean tier yet had the arrogance that said that, the heavens may be greatest, the earth may be number 2, but I am number 3. "You damn brat, do you know who I am?" the spoilt young monster said arrogantly. "My surname is Sunday." "Oh, grandson one." Ling Han nodded. "Fuck." The profligate young master was infuriated, and he immediately leapt up in anger. This young man was really demeaning him too much, wasn't he? "Young master son, don't get mad. He's only a country bumpkin. Furthermore, this place is the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, and it would not be proper to make a move here." Someone immediately came up to mediate. It was a friend of the spoilt young master. The spoilt young master gave a humph, and with a flourish of his sleeve he said, "Consider yourself lucky. Otherwise, I would have skinned you alive." Ling Han shook his head. It would be over and done with if he just used a finger to pierce to death such a piece of trash. Anyways, there were already uncountable people targeting a heaven-grade alchemist like him, so he was not afraid if there was another one or two added to the bunch. "The 5 dragons and twin phoenixes are here. It really is them. This aura is really too amazing." It was at this moment that a sudden commotion arose among the crowd. Everyone turned to look behind. A group of 7 people was striding over. There were a total of 5 men and 2 women, and all of them looked to be only in their mid-20s. Yet, every one of them seemed like giants among men. Furthermore, they were all in the flower blossom tier. The Middle State was really deserving of its reputation. There were actually so many flower blossom tier cultivators below 30 years of age. And this was only Million Treasure City, and not ancient great sect like the Heaven Sword sect and the Cloud Phoenix sect. Who knew how many powerful prodigies and geniuses these sects had? The 5 dragons and twin phoenixes were the 7 most outstanding people of the younger generation in Million Treasure City. They were all members of the great clans of the city. If that was not the case, without sufficient cultivation resources, no matter how much of a genius you were, there was no way you would be able to break through to the flower blossom tier before 30 years old. These 7 people walked forwards, unafraid and upright. Every single one of them exuded a bearing of unmatchable confidence. One of the dragons spotted Ling Han, and could not help but look surprised. I didn't think that there would actually be such a young person who is already in the flower blossom tier. Haha, brat, become my follower. Chapter 548. Are you qualified? What? Jia Zhang actually wants to take in this young man as a follower? This brat has really gotten a big break. Jia Zhang's father is Grandmaster Kang's youngest disciple, and he's rumored to be shockingly talented in alchemy. His future accomplishments would be immeasurable. Which Grandmaster Kang? Haha, in Million Treasure City, who else would dare refer to himself as Grandmaster Kang? Could he be the heaven-grade alchemist, Kang Zishur, Grandmaster Kang? Naturally. The masses released exclamations of shock. A considerable number actually directed envious looks at Ling Han. If he could become Jia Zhang's follower, then there would be no longer any need for him to worry about obtaining alchemical pills. One had to know that there were an unknown number of people here who wanted desperately to become Jia Zhang's followers, but the latter would not even look at them. Even the profligate from before could not help but feel extreme envy. Though his background was not too bad, but it was incomparable to Jia Zhang. If one was like a dragon, then it was already very kind to compare the other to a dog. All eyes looked at Ling Han, and no matter how they pondered, there was no chance that Ling Han would reject the offer. Ling Han cast an eye on Jia Zhang and said with a smile, "Are you sure you're qualified enough for me to follow you?" Ha 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 ha. Jia Zhang laughed loudly. Young man, you are able to break through to the flower blossom tier at such a young age, and this is indeed a commendable feat. However, from the flower blossom tier onwards, there are pitifully few natural treasures that will have supplementary effects for you. You can only depend on the alchemical pills concocted by high-grade alchemists. And my father is the disciple of a heaven-grade alchemist. So, don't you think that I'm qualified enough for you to follow me? This was indeed a fact. Before the flower blossom tier, alchemical pills were more commonly used for recovery and healing, but from the flower blossom tier onwards, alchemical pills would really become supplementary items that no cultivator could go without. How tremendously difficult a feat it was to comprehend the natural Tao of this world. However, high-grade alchemists were capable of extracting the natural essence from medicinal ingredients and transform them into Paterntsa kind of consciousness. That would allow a cultivator to have better comprehension and increase the advancement rate of one's cultivation. Ling Han laughed and said, "I see you have already broken through to the flower blossom tier before 30, so you can barely be considered a genius. In the future, you may follow by my side and be a manservant." Pooh! Everyone choked. This brat was really too mad, wasn't he? He actually wanted one of the 5 dragons, Jia Zhang, to follow him? Where had he gotten such confidence to say something like that? Jia Zhang had not foreseen this either. He had already revealed his background, but Ling Han was not the slightest bit moved. He could not help but feel slightly stunned. "Ha ha ha ha, Jia Zhang, you've been beaten, haven't you?" One of the other 5 dragons laughed. "That's right. Usually, just because you have a lot of alchemical pills, you always throw them in everyone's faces, and now, you've finally thrown them at a wall of iron, haven't you?" Jia Zhang could not help but look angry, and said, "Wall of iron? At most it's only a wall of wood." He's only about 20, and is already in the 2nd layer of the flower blossom tier. And you still think he's a wall of wood? One of the others continued to fan the flames, enjoying chaotic situations. Jia Zhang felt humiliated, and countered, "He's only in the 2nd layer of the flower blossom tier. I would be able to suppress him single-handedly." "Jia Zhang, you too, are only in the 2nd layer of the flower blossom tier," someone pointed out. The cultivation level may be the same, but there could be a massive gulf in battle prowess. And my battle prowess is 7 stars. Jia Zhang declared arrogantly. To be able to have battle prowess surpassing 5 stars, this was indeed a very terrifying thing. Usually, one with battle prowess surpassing 2 stars could already be considered a genius, and 5 stars was definitely a super genius. "Forget it," one of the twin phoenixes, a girl in green robes, advised. She was extremely beautiful, not the slightest bit inferior to Lu Yutong or Li Si Chan. She looked like a deity with her extremely beautiful looks and touching temperament. The auction is about to begin. It's best to enter earlier.
For Miss Li's sake, I'll spare you this once.
Jia Zhang humphed. Meanwhile, the other girl in red robes was a quirky one.
She waved a hand at Ling Han and said, I see that you're waiting here, so you must not have an invitation, right?
Why don't you come with us? Our private room is big, anyway, so having one more person would be fine. Ling Han laughed and said, Thank you for the invitation, but I, as a human, would prefer not to sit with cats or dogs to avoid downgrading my own status. When he said, cats or dogs, his eyes were focused on Jia Zhang, and the meaning between the lines could be no more obvious. He was comparing Jia Zhang to an animal. This time, not only Jia Zhang was driven furious, even the other 6 people were slightly displeased. They were part of Jia Zhang's group, so didn't that mean that they, too, were cats and dogs?
Brat, watch your mouth, one of them rebuked.
Oh! Ling Han was completely indifferent. You all came here, and the first thing that pops out of your mouth is to make me your follower. Is that reasonable? Then call your fathers here. I'm in a good mood today, so I will take them in as my followers. How dare you? The 5 dragons shouted simultaneously. Had this young man lost his mind? Which one of their fathers wasn't an important, influential figure? This young man was practically seeking his own demise. Ling Han humphed and said, You feel displeased? Then, before you open your mouths, think carefully if your words would offend someone. There are some people in this world that you cannot afford to offend. Mad. He was really mad. In front of the 5 dragons and twin phoenixes, he actually said that he was someone that they could not afford to offend, but who the fuck was he? It could be claimed that these 7 people were practically representatives of the 7 strongest parties in this million treasure city. Added together, even the city would have to give them face. Ling Han was only 20 years old, and such a young man himself was definitely no one too important. In terms of background, there was no way he could compare to the 5 dragons and twin phoenixes, so where had he gotten such self-confidence from? One could only say that he was too mad. Could it be that the 7 of us have not been out for too long a time that people have already forgotten our power? One of them asked coldly. His name was Lai Qin Yun, one of the 5 dragons. The forefather of his clan was in the deity transformation tier, and his background was also the worst off amongst their group. However, his personal talent in martial arts was extremely high, and he was also the one who took his place as one of the 5 dragons most seriously. In comparison, the green-clad girl was Kinder. She merely frowned slightly and said, Forget it, he's merely a madman. Her name was Li Fei Yun. The Li clan was an old great clan in Million Treasure City. They had a powerful heaven-tier cultivator in their ranks, but in the last few years, there were rumors that this old monster had already fossilized, though no one knew the truth of the matter. Meanwhile, the red-clad girl was obviously one who liked to stir up trouble. She immediately pulled Li Fei Yun back and said, Big Sister Yun, this brat's pride is sky high, so let us just see if he can back it up. Her name was Ding Ban Xiong, and she, too, was a member of a great clan that possessed a heaven-tier cultivator. The 5 dragons glared at Ling Han simultaneously. All of them were giants among men and rulers of martial arts. The combined appearance of all 5 of them formed a terrifying pressure. Any normal cultivator in the flower blossom tier would probably have shaky legs in the face of such pressure, not even being able to remain standing. Ling Han looked like he felt nothing. These 5 people were indeed very strong, but they were far from the level of Yao Hui Yu and Shenyuan Zi Guang. Even compared to Lang Wu Xian and Fei Hong, they were still far inferior, and they wanted to suppress him? What kind of joke was that? Are you playing a game of crossing your eyes? He asked, smiling. This brat was really mad. At this point, he actually still dared to tease them. Brat, speak your name. Jia Zhang shouted. What, do you guys want to beat me up? Ling Han asked in surprise. People with cheap mouths naturally should be properly disciplined. Lai Qin Yun said coldly. Chapter 549. Grandmaster Ling. Tension thickened. All 5 dragons came from prestigious backgrounds. If it was a direct confrontation with the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, they would definitely not dare to do so, But if it was simply thrashing someone at the main entrance to the pavilion, they believed that the Spirit Treasures Pavilion would not cling on to this fact and make things difficult. They were confident that the pavilion would at least give them this amount of allowance. The 5 dragons had their attention closely focused on Ling Han, their eyes icy cold. This young man spoke to them with such insolence, and made them extremely displeased. Ling Han placed his hands behind his back and said with a smile, "You want to make a move? Then you'd best consider carefully. Later, even if you kneel in front of me begging for mercy, it would have to depend on my mood." Ha 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 ha. The 5 dragons all sneered. Did this young man have absolutely no concept of how the word death was written? The observers all laughed loudly as well. They had seen many madly arrogant people, but it was the first time they had seen someone like Ling Han who was so arrogant when he had absolutely no basis to back up his confidence. How reckless! Fei Zhang moved. They were the mighty 5 dragons, so naturally, they would not join forces and gang up on a single person. However, to be able to qualify as one of the 5 dragons as an exception of the norm, his prowess was naturally extraordinary. One of his hands shot out. Tightly woven patterns appeared, then transformed into a divine light of gold, as if it was not a human arm, but the golden claw of a divine dragon. Ling Han seemed to be stunned as he displayed absolutely no reaction at all. Everyone else shook their heads. When they saw him act so high and mighty, they had initially thought that he might have some great prowess to back it up. But now, it actually seemed that he would not be able to withstand even a single blow. The dragon claw approached, and a terrifying pressure rolled out. The skin of a lower-level flower blossom tier cultivator could even simply rip apart from the mere pressure. Ling Han did not move a hand. No, he moved his foot. He shot a direct kick right into Fei Zhang's face. The timing of this kick was very meticulous as it actually just happened to avoid Fei Zhang's attack. Furthermore, if Fei Zhang had taken Ling Han a bit more seriously, he would definitely not have delivered such a close-up attack, or at least, he would not have been so rash right from the very first strike. However, very unluckily, he was too careless, and thought it would be a very easy thing for him to strike Ling Han down. As a result, this kick was directly planted on his face. How could an arm be longer than a leg? Thus, before Fei Zhang even got close to Ling Han, he was solidly kicked by Ling Han's stretched-out foot. Fei Zhang gave a soft humph and quickly tilted his head, narrowly dodging this kick. He was, after all, one of the 5 dragons and one of the most skilled of the younger generation, so he could not possibly be that weak. He took multiple steps back, a burning ache on his face. He could not help but extend a hand to touch his face, and to his shock, he realized that there were actually traces of blood on his hand. Though he had dodged Ling Han's kick, it was as if the strong wind generated by the kick was as sharp as a blade. He did not cultivate body of iron sheet, so how could he possibly get off lightly when the aftermath of an attack on the level of the flower blossom tier rubbed against him? Hiss! Everyone could not help but inhale sharply. One of the 5 dragons, Fei Zhang, actually experienced a loss at a single strike. Though it was merely a scrape, and had absolutely no effect on his battle prowess, but amongst their age range, how many people were capable of injuring Fei Zhang? Even if Fei Zhang had been careless, Ling Han's individual skill would have to be strong enough to be able to successfully perform such a feat. I've really underestimated you. Fei Zhang rubbed clean the remaining traces of blood on his face, his eyes slightly red. He felt true anger now. Yet Ling Han said, "On the other hand, I did not underestimate you. You really do only have this little ability." Fuck, that was really too cocky. Not only Fei Zhang was enraged, the other 4 dragons could not tolerate this, either. The 5 dragons were a whole group, and Fei Zhang being demeaned was equivalent to their own level being pulled down along with him. This naturally made them even more displeased and unhappy. Again, Fei Zhang said coldly. He had learned his lesson this time. He would not engage in a close-quarters combat with Ling Han again. Cultivators cultivated their own qi, and that was truly their strongest weapon. How could he display the power of his qi to its maximum capacity at close range? Grandmaster Ling. It was at this moment that an exclamation was heard from the top of the staircase. Tang tang ting. A short, round fatty raced down the steps. This man was really too fat, so fat that one could barely even see his legs. Thus, everyone felt as if they were watching a meatball rolling down the stairs.
This undoubtedly would be a very hilarious sight, but not one person actually laughed, because this was a big shot of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. His figure had a high grade and his status too was high grade.
The 7th Pavilion Master. Shui-Yong. The Spirit Treasures Pavilion of the Middle State had a total of 9 Pavilion Masters. These were really important characters, qualified to be on equal footing with the sect leaders and grand elders of the ancient great clans. Furthermore, all the 9 Pavilion Masters were in the Heaven tier. Did the Spirit Treasures Pavilion not have a powerful Shattering Void tier cultivator on hand? According to rumors, yes, but none have ever seen him before. A high and mighty cultivator of the Heaven tier would actually come forwards personally to receive a Grandmasterling. Then what kind of existence would this Grandmasterling have to be? An Earth-grade high-level alchemist? No, an Earth-grade high-level alchemist might not yet be qualified for such treatment. It would have to be a Heaven-grade alchemist. But the problem here was, didn't this world only have 2 Heaven-grade alchemists, and neither of them had the surname Ling? Wait. There was indeed a Heaven-grade alchemist by the surname of Ling, but that person was from the North region, and was rumored to have even obtained the inheritance of the 12 courts. Furthermore, he even found out the location of the depository of an immortal. This Heaven-grade alchemist came here too? Where? Everyone turned here and there, hoping for a glimpse of this legendary person. Naturally, not one of them imagined that it could be Ling Hanhe was too young. How could such a young man be any kind of grandmaster? The meatball rolled all the way down, and those in his way hurriedly stepped aside to avoid being run over. However, this meatball was rolling too fast, and there were some who did not manage to dodge in time. They were instantly sent flying as if they were mere scarecrows. But Shui-Yong did not have the slightest inclination to stop. This was what being in the Heaven tier meant. He could act as willfully as he liked. The 5 dragons all had a scare, and hurriedly stepped to the side of the path. They did not have the slightest qualification to challenge a Heaven tier elite. Not just them. Even if the highest-ranked person in their clans came, they would still have to be obedient and docile in front of Shui-Yong. Thus, if they were really sent flying, they could only bear with it like a bout of bad luck. Yet Ling Han made no move to dodge or hide. Hiss, who did this brat think he was? If he was really trampled to death by a Heaven tier cultivator, he would have died for nothing. Who asked him to be so blind? The meatball's speed was too fast, and in an instant, he was already near Ling Han. Everyone shook their heads. It was obvious that Ling Han, too, would be sent flying like his predecessors. But it was at this very moment that the meatball Shui-Yong suddenly stepped on brakes and stopped directly in front of Ling Han. A smile appeared on his round face. Because he was really too fat, his neck could not be seen at all. It was as if there was a small ball perched on top of a large ball, making for an incredibly funny sight. Yet not one person dared to laugh. To laugh at the appearance of a Heaven tier cultivator right in his face, that was really a move to make when one was tired of living. Yet Ling Han broke out into loud laughter. With every laugh, the cheek muscles of the spectators involuntarily twitched as they felt a cold feeling rise up from their hearts. Hopefully, Shui-Yong would not sink into a mad rage later on. If a Heaven tier cultivator was in a rage, then a massacre would be inevitable. Unexpectedly, Shui-Yong also began to laugh, and from the looks of it, he seemed to be quite pleased. Grandmaster Ling, you've honored us with your presence. Apologies for not coming out to meet you. Please forgive the offense. Shui-Yong bowed. Fuck. A strong feeling of dizziness swept over all the spectators. A high and mighty Heaven tier elite actually bowed in front of a mere flower blossom tier cultivator. Had their vision blurred or something? In addition, Grandmaster Ling, this guy was Ling Han. The expressions of the 5 dragons instantly became unimaginably ugly. Chapter 550, Brick. This young man was actually Grandmaster Ling? What kind of joke was that? Yet how could it be that a high and mighty Heaven tier elite cultivator would deliberately put on such an act merely to prank a few juniors like themselves? If they thought that, then they really had too high an opinion of themselves. Everyone could not help but recall what Ling Han had said before. Even if Fei Zhang and the other 4 dragons knelt in front of him and kowtowed an apology later, Ling Han might not even pay them any heed. When they had heard that, they all thought it was merely an arrogant boast, But now, everyone was fully convinced that it was an absolute fact. A heaven-grade alchemist, what kind of awesome existence was that? He was someone that even a heaven-grade cultivator would actually come out to receive him personally. By that, one could tell how important his status and how exceptionally high his social rank was. A few juniors merely in the flower blossom tier weren't even qualified to carry his shoes for him. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "You're too polite. How should I address you?" Just look at how influential he was. Shuiyang had already come out personally to receive him, and yet Ling Han did not even know who he was. What a big show-off. Ha 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 ha, Shuiyang. I am the 7th Pavilion Master of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. If Grandmaster Ling does not mind, you may just call me Little Yang, Shuiyang said with a smile. Everyone instantly shivered in disgust. Looking at the figure of this man, they really had no idea who would be able to call him Little Yang. But in this world, how many people were actually qualified to call him Little Yang? Aside from a few invincible cultivators of the Shattering Void tier, there were probably only a few high-level Heaven tier cultivators that had such qualification. 7th Pavilion Master. Ling Han was disgusted as well. He could not make himself call out the name Little Yang, even if he tried. Grandmaster Ling would like to participate in today's auction? Shuiyang asked. That's right. Ling Han nodded. Please, please. Shuiyang hurriedly invited him inside. Ling Han walked forwards. Instantly, everyone, especially Fei Zhang and that profligate young master, breathed an internal sigh of relief. But Ling Han then stopped, then turned and said to Shuiyang, 7th Pavilion Master, if I want to call a few people to account, would I seem to be too much of a bully? Shuiyang's expression immediately darkened. He asked, "Oh, could there be that someone offended Grandmaster Ling?" "Ho ho, one wants me to call him grandfather, another wants me to become his follower, and there are a few more who want to beat me up," Ling Han said, smiling. When they heard his words, Fei Zhang and that profligate young master were on the brink of tears. How could they have known that Ling Han was a heaven-grade alchemist? If they had known, they would not have dared to say such a thing no matter what. Who? Shuiyang's eyes swept over the crowd. Instantly, a powerful pressure swept over the masses. At this moment, he was no longer that amiable damn fatty, but a heaven-tier elite cultivator that could make the world tremble with a single stomp. The spectators felt as if their very spirits were trembling in trepidation, and they could not even manage to gather the slightest energy to resist. Ling Han nodded internally. This fatty's cultivation should have reached approximately the 4th to 5th layer of the heaven tier, though he could not accurately sense exactly which layer the former was at. After all, Ling Han merely had a sliver of divine sense of the heaven tier at the moment. Fei Zhang and that profligate young master stepped out on trembling legs. They both knelt down on the ground and said, "Please forgive our offense, Grandmaster Ling." Ling Han merely acted like he had not seen them, and continued to chat with Shuiyang, talking about trifling matters. He was obviously ignoring Fei Zhang and the other 4 dragons as well as that profligate young master. He had really been true to his word. They had all knelt, but whether Ling Han accepted their apology would have to depend on his mood. The 5 dragons exchanged looks with each other. They all hardened their hearts, and began to slap themselves. When the profligate young master saw this, he quickly kowtowed continuously, really afraid that Shuiyang would eliminate all of them in a rage. "Grandmaster Ling, the auction is about to begin. Why don't we just go in and sit down first?" Shuiyang asked. He, too, did not want so many people to crowd around the main door of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. After all, this would not have good implications. Ling Han merely directed a smile at Fei Zhang and the other dragons, as well as that profligate young master, before he walked up the stairs and entered into the Great Hall. Fei Zhang and the dragons as well as that profligate young master all broke out in a cold sweat. Though Ling Han had not rebuked them, how could things be settled so easily after offending a heaven-grade alchemist? With Shuiyang in the lead, Ling Han arrived inside a private room. This was also the most luxurious private room in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. At the moment, only Ling Han obtained such an honor. Ordinarily, such a top-quality private room would only be used during the special auction that would be held every dozen years or so. It was specifically reserved for the use of the Shattering Void tier elite cultivators and other persons of similar status, such as a heaven-grade alchemist. Ling Han had long since become indifferent towards empty fame. He was completely calm in the face of such special treatment, and sat down inside the private room. The auction would begin in a moment's time. Ying Shuiyang spoke to Ling Han for a few moments before begging his leave and departed. He had also very generously given Ling Han an overdraft of 100,000 triple-star origin crystals. To be honest, the identity of a heaven-grade alchemist could not possibly be just worth this amount. So why had the former given Ling Han such a small tab? That was simple. Shattering void tier cultivators would perhaps not take the inheritance of the 12 courts too seriously, but the depository of an immortal concerned too much. If he became the target of the shattering void tier cultivators, Ling Han would definitely be fraught with grim odds. Thus, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion would naturally not invest too much in such an unstable variable. To be able to grant him a tab of 100,000 triple-star origin crystals, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion was actually already being very generous. As Ling Han sat, one transaction after another was completed. However, there were also some auction items that were not purchased. It was indeed worthy of being the huge auction that would only be held once every month. There were too many items up for auction and the variety was tremendous, but not even one garnered Ling Han's interest. On the other hand, such an auction would only take place once a month. Thus, there could not possibly be too many valuable items up for auction. Perhaps, after another month, there would be astonishing valuable treasures up for auction in the annual grand auction that would be held then. Ha ha ha! Suddenly, a bout of loud laughter rang out in the auction venue. Ling Han had initially been sleepy. When he heard such a huge commotion, he could not help but look over. He saw that the auctioneer was actually holding a brick. A brick! Ling Han felt a slight urge to laugh, but when he thought about it, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion shouldn't have really gone so far and used a brick to hoodwink their customers. Thus, he began to look more closely. This was actually not a brick. It merely looked very much like one, but upon a closer look, one would still be able to see that its edges were not uniform. It seemed to have initially belonged to a gigantic rock, and had now been knocked off. One side of the brick was flat, but the other side actually had half a character, or perhaps it would be better to call it the traces of writing, though it could not clearly be seen what exactly it was. This brick has been through the close examination of several master appraisers of our pavilion. However, they were not able to analyze the specifics of its structure and what it is exactly used for. The only thing that could be confirmed was that this had once belonged to a stone plaque, and is at least 100,000 years old. Furthermore, this stone brick is extremely hard, and has been obtained from a specific ancient historical site. The auctioneer introduced the brick. He seemed to be unable to find any other advantages of this brick, and thus, could only try as much as possible to brag. Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth, but he, too, was unable to tell what was special about this brick. There were only a few marks of writing on it, which seemed to make something in his heart feel alive. Interesting. The base price is 10 origin crystals, the auctioneer said, obviously not placing much hope on this auction item. 20. 50. 100. Though they could not tell what this brick was used for at the moment, there was still a considerable number of people willing to buy it as a collectible because it was at least 100,000 years old. 1,000, Ling Han declared. Without specifying the grade of origin crystals, it was understood that the bid was in single-star origin crystals. For Ling Han, single-star origin crystals were really not considered as much money. 2,000. Another person made a competing bid. The voice that spoke sounded a bit familiar. Chapter 551. Could not bite through. Mu Fei Yao. Ling Han suddenly recalled. She was a member of the Cold Spear Association, which he suspected had been established by his disciple. At that time, just for the sake of an alchemy furnace that he had once used, she had once fought desperately with an old man. She spent money as if it was mere water. He hadn't thought that she had come here as well, and furthermore, also had her eye on this brick. Hold on, it couldn't be that she was purposely arguing with him just for the sake of arguing, right? The Cold Spear Association fully supported the Ling Han of 10,000 years ago, and was naturally filled with hostility towards this Ling Han that had reappeared, thinking that because he, too, was called Ling Han and was an alchemist as well, it was a kind of blasphemy to the Ling Han from 10,000 years ago.
Therefore, it was not impossible that because she recognized his voice, she was now deliberately competing against him just to spite him. The status of a heaven-grade alchemist could cover for almost everything, but it was not capable of accomplishing literally everything. For example, the Cold Spear Association, which revered the Ling Han from 10,000 years ago to death, was naturally filled with boundless disdain towards the current him. Most importantly, the Cold Spear Association seemed to be extremely wealthy.
3,000. Ling Han increased his bid. 5,000. Mu Fei Yao followed his lead without any hesitation. Fuck. Hadn't he thrashed her behind enough at the time? Why was she now standing against him now? 10,000. Ling Han increased his bid as well. 20,000. Mu Fei Yao increased her bid even more happily. In a mere few moments, the bidding price of this bid had been raised to 100,000. One had to remember that the starting bid for this thing was a mere 10 origin crystals. Indeed, even if it was a piece of S******, as long as there were two people who had their eye on it, it could still get the price of gold. Ling Han did not cower.
Single star and double star origin crystals were not of much use to him by now, and he had originally meant to spend such grade of origin crystals like money.
Meanwhile, triple star origin crystals were to be reserved for the purpose of cultivation. Thus, as long as the price remained inside this range, he did not mind spending money like it was dirt. As a heaven-grade alchemist, he really did not place much importance on money. The bidding continued, and only when the bidding price reached 1,000,000 origin crystals did Mu Fei Yao finally stop with a smirk. This woman had definitely done this deliberately. Though Ling Han did not care about money, to have someone raise the price so that he was forced to pay 1,000,000 origin crystals, he was still honestly very displeased. In the future, if this woman actually found out who he really was, the expression she would have on her face would definitely be very hilarious. Or so he thought spitefully in his heart. At that time, he would definitely make good use of the opportunity, and make her kneel down obediently and call him ancestor. Soon, the personnel of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion delivered the brick over. With whom Ling Han was, he could actually place this on his tab, but since he had the money for it, he did not want to take advantage of it and simply paid directly. He examined this brick closely. This thing was definitely made out of stone, but it really was very solid. Ling Han was not only unable to break it, even using the demon birth sword to slash it was useless. It did not leave behind a single mark. Who knew what effect would be produced if he handed it over to Hu Niu to chew? A thought flashed in Ling Han's head. He threw the brick into the black tower and thought, "Small tower, what kind of material is this? Do you think I am an encyclopedia?" Small tower instantly said in a tsundere manner. "I have lost all my previous memories, so how could I know what this rock that does not even have a bit of source power is?" Still so tsundere even after lost your memories. Ling Han mocked internally. Pang pang pang. The rock spirit meanwhile, raced over in a rush, its attention completely focused on that brick. Its mouth had split open, and if it was capable of salivating at this moment, its saliva would definitely have formed a river. Master, eat. Eat. It transmitted a thought to Ling Han. Fine, I'll give it to you. Still, this thing is really hard, so don't chip your teeth on it, Ling Han said carelessly. Though he had paid 1,000,000 origin crystals for it, he was never stingy in matters which concerned his own people. Though it was very difficult to refer to the rock spirit as people. The rock spirit was very happy, and quickly pounced over to begin chewing on it. With a crack it bit down. It actually bit so hard that its whole head was shattered by the force. This was because it had used too much force, while the brick was really too hard. The result was that the brick did not shatter. Instead, its head shattered. Thankfully, the rock spirit was capable of fragmenting itself in the first place, and split into a great many little stone creatures. Moreover, for a rock spirit, their human-like figure was only a shape that they maintained. Their head and chest were not their vital points at all, and had absolutely no difference with an arm or a leg. As a result, countless rock debris immediately flew back and gathered once more upon its head, regaining its original shape. The rock spirit would still not give up, and began biting again. However, without any change, it was completely unable to chew apart this brick. The result of using too much force was shattering its own head from the impact. Furthermore, after a few more times of the same result, its recovery rate had gradually slowed down. Ling Han was a little worried that it would really kill itself in the process of trying to get stronger, so he hurriedly drew away the brick and said, "You are not capable of digesting this rock at this moment. Wait until you get stronger, then I'll give it back to you." The rock spirit knelt down onto the ground with a paw, its arms continuously pounding on the ground, causing the ground to tremor from the impact. It was as if the rock spirit was wailing in despair, making Ling Han marvel at the sight. He had never thought that this giant rock would actually be so human-like in behavior and would actually show an expression of misery. However, the rock spirit was skilled at digesting strange rocks. Moreover, after fusing with the rock of the divine temple inside the 12 heaven mystery realms, its cultivation was greatly raised. By now, it was already in the 7th layer of the flower blossom tier, yet was not able to even digest a scrap of the brick at all, which showed how high the grade of this brick was. He drew out the brick again and observed the few pen marks on it. Though there was no way to tell what kind of lettering it was, there was a majestic air to it, a kind of weight that had surpassed eons. He played with it carelessly as he thought that this would not be a bad thing to bash someone with, as it was hard enough to do quite a lot of damage. The auction was still ongoing. There were a few ancient martial art techniques up for auction which had originated from the ancient historical sites. What surprised Ling Han was that there were 2 ancient relics that belonged to the era of his previous life, now becoming antiques that people would fight over. He could not help but feel emotional. In what seemed like a dream, 10,000 years had passed for him. Upon his awakening, everything had changed, and no matter where he looked in this world, there was no longer anyone that was familiar to him. He had to reach the shattering void tier as soon as possible. Then, he could shatter the empty void and become an immortal so that he could once again compete with the Sword Emperor and the others. There was also the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. She liked him yet did not tell him, and kept their relationship so ambiguous. He was definitely going to give her a good spanking. The auction ended successfully. As there was still 1 more month until the grand auction held at the end of the year, the items up for auction this time were not really all that valuable, as all the really good stuff would be reserved for the subsequent grand auction. Ling Han knew that the news of his appearance would have spread throughout the whole Million Treasure City. At this moment, there might be heaven-tier cultivators already lying in ambush, wanting to subdue him in secret and force out the information regarding the inheritance of the 12 courts as well as about the depository of the immortal. There was nothing else that could be done. Though he was a heaven-grade alchemist, who asked him to rise up too quickly while he had yet to form his own party. Otherwise, if he had a dozen or more heaven-tier cultivators following by his side, then aside from shattering void-tier cultivators, what party would dare to trifle with him? He exited the private room. When he arrived in a corner, he directly entered into the Black Tower. After putting on his disguise, he reappeared and overtly joined the masses. He strolled out of the auction venue and calmly turned back round and returned to his accommodations. And there was actually not one person that suspected him. Who would have thought that he would hide himself inside the Spirit Treasures Pavilion? This was what it meant to hide in the shadow cast by the lamp. 1. Chapter 552. Fatima's Invitation. Ling Han returned to his accommodations. Hunyao and Helian Sun Shui immediately came up to receive him, each gripping onto one of his arms respectively. "Why did you come back so late? Niao missed you to death," Hunyao said in a cute voice. "Why did you come back so late? Little Shui missed you to death." Helian Sun Shui followed her example. Her intelligence was really worrying. She actually copied an undependable little girl. Zhu Xian'er merely smiled at one side. She had removed her veil, revealing her captivating beauty. She, unlike Helian Sun Shui and Hunyao, did not fight for his attention, but rather offered him a fragrant cup of tea. "Xian'er is still the best," Ling Han complimented. "Humph." Hunyao was displeased. Pouting her little mouth, she declared, "Niao knows how to too." She then raced off, presumably to make him some tea. Helian Sun Shui stared blankly, not knowing if she should follow Hunyao or continue to stay and hold onto the corner of Ling Han's sleeve. In mere moments, Hunyao returned with a cup of hot tea. The little girl had never been very dependable. As she ran, copious amounts of tea continued to spill out. Yet she paid it no mind at all. When she stood in front of Ling Han, she placed the cup on the table with a paw, then looked at Ling Han proudly, seemingly expecting Ling Han to praise her as well. Ling Han took a look. Right, at least 2/3 of the cup's contents consisted of tea leaves.
He laughed loudly and said, "Hu Niu is indeed generous."
Anyone else would only place a few tea leaves for their tea, whereas she would throw in tea leaves by the handful. Hu Niu instantly broke out in a dazzling smile.
It was good enough for her to have Ling Han's praise. She did not care about anything else.
At night, both Hu Niu and Helian Sun Shui went to bed.
This seemed to be a trait of physical cultivators. They placed more importance on their physical bodies than those cultivators that cultivated origin power.
Those who cultivated origin power could actually meditate in place of actual sleep. Zhu Xian'er finally found the chance to have some personal time with Ling Han.
She leant back in Ling Han's arms, and felt her heart was very much at peace.
She felt very much at ease. After obtaining the alchemical pill from Ling Han, her master had already recovered from her Dao injury. Though there were still some lingering effects, her power had still returned to the spiritual infant tier. In a place like the North region, that would be considered a top elite. Now, she no longer had any worries.
She was left with only one thought in her mind, and that was to be with this man for all eternity.
The two of them chatted on and off, and gradually saw sparks of passion flicker in each other's eyes. Involuntarily, they eventually embraced one another. Ling Han's hands moved all over, touching the spots that this extreme beauty was proud of. Meanwhile, Zhu Xian'er was extremely shy, and closed her bright eyes.
Only light hums could be heard from her nose as if she was encouraging Ling Han's movements. He was just about to place a kiss upon those entrancing red lips, yet involuntarily thought that the heavens were really amazing. They were both extreme beauties, but Zhu Xian'er and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden were completely different types of beauties. One was gentle and cool, whereas the other was noble and spirited. When he recalled the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, it was as if a basin of cold water had been poured down on him, and instantly, whatever desire he felt was extinguished without any traces left. He merely held Zhu Xian'er and gently rubbed her jade-smooth back. The only thing left inside his heart was endless longing. Meanwhile, Zhu Xian'er very obediently leant back in his embrace, and silently listened to the sound of Ling Han's heartbeat. For a few days, Ling Han stayed in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, either cultivating or playing around with the girls. His days were spent very comfortably. But it was still rather boring to stay continuously in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. With the encouragement and urging of Hu Niu and Helian Sun Shui, Ling Han decided to take the three girls and walk around Million Treasure City. They exited the Spirit Treasures Pavilion and walked in the center of this ancient city. It was an ancient city with a long history. One could sense the air of history and age around every corner, and every single brick had its own ancient legend. On this day, they played around a great many places, and at night, they settled at a lakeside inn, enjoying the beautiful sight of the lake at night. The bright moon and the many stars were reflected on the surface of the lake. Starlight and moonlight flickered continuously, and the scene was exceptionally beautiful. Ling Han and his group sat themselves at the banks of the lake, admiring the beautiful scenery whilst having a barbecue. So fragrant, give me a piece." A voice rang out. A round, fat figure appeared and stretched out a hand to grab the meat skewer that was still grilling, without any fear of the heat.
"Damn fatty, this is Niu's." Hu Niu was enraged. Whoever tried to snatch her food would be considered a great enemy, and she immediately shot out a foot to kick the newcomer away.
However, though this man was a damn fatty, he was a very nimble damn fatty.
With a twist of his body, he actually dodged Hu Niu's kick, and his left hand seemed to be completely unaffected. In a single move, it had managed to grab onto a meat skewer. Hu Niu was shouting in rage, and rushed forth in a flurry of punches and kicks. The fatty merely dodged and ducked, but did not retaliate and allowed the little girl to attack him as he liked, showing the extreme flexibility of his body. Yet Hu Niu was even more nimble. They had barely exchanged a few blows when he was hit with a solid punch on his lower abdomen. His round stomach instantly concaved inwards, but his fat body actually acted like a buffer. The concave formed only midway when the force behind Hu Niu's punch had completely disappeared. His stomach bounced and instantly regained its original shape. It even rippled a few times like water. Hu Niu was moving to attack again when Ling Han grabbed hold of her.
Yet, she was not pacified at all, and continued to bare her teeth at the fatty. Ling Han smiled and asked, "Fatty Ma, here to make your fortune."
This fatty was precisely Ma Duobao. Ma Duobao flopped and sat on the ground. There was not much difference between his figure and Ying Shuiyang's.
His legs couldn't be seen in the first place, and now that he had sat down, it was as if a round ball had been laid on the ground. One would really worry if he would actually lose his balance and begin to roll around on the ground. He ate the meat skewer first, then wiped away the traces of oil and said, "My tanned brother, even if people are separated by great distance, there is always a chance that they may meet each other again.
Still, every time I see you, you look differently. What's going on here?" He was playing dumb. Ling Han did not explain.
It was obvious that Ma Duobao was an able man. No matter how he disguised himself, the former would always be able to recognize him with a single look.
He smiled then said, "Damn fatty, it can't be that you've purposely come to steal my meat, right?"
"Who said I've not?"
Ma Duobao really did not hold back. Shwa, shwa, shwa. He had already snatched a few more meat skewers. Hunyo was filled with so much grief she was on the brink of tears. She glared furiously at Ma Duobao, thinking that this fatty was really detestable. Ling Han snickered, drew out some fine wine and poured him a cup.
Then he said, "Come, have some wine."
Hee. Lord Bao's appetite for wine is very good. If you want to make me drunk to loosen my tongue, that is impossible.
Ma Duobao had seen through to Ling Han's motives, yet he still lifted the wine cup and gulped it down. Instantly, his brow relaxed and he said loudly, "Good wine.
Good wine."
This time, he did not beat around the bush and said, "My tanned brother, Lord Bao plans to form a party and invite you to join.
How about it?" Ling Han laughed and said, "I have now become the target of many. Aren't you afraid that I would attract trouble for you?" "What trouble? Lord Bao's one hand can cover the whole sky. I'll block all trouble for you," Ma Duobao said carelessly. Ling Han made no comment. He instead asked, "What kind of party do you plan to establish, and what is its purpose?" "To split open the skies." Chapter 553. Splitting Open the Skies.
Pooh! Ling Han instantly spat out his mouthful of wine. If Fatty Ma said he wanted to form some kind of party to conquer the world, then Ling Han would not be the slightest bit surprised. There were countless people in the pages of history with such grand ambitions, so it would not be a surprise that Ma Duobao would join their ranks.
However, this Ma Duobao should not have such great power, right?
Though Ling Han couldn't see through him, no matter how he thought about it, there was no way that the former's power had reached the shattering void tier.
But to split open the skies.
The gods were everywhere. These gods would not punish evil, but if one were to upset the balance of the world, it would make the eye of heavenly Tao appear, and possibly even directly eliminate such a being. Ling Han had said something similar previously, resulting in the appearance of the eye of heavenly Tao, which was then scared off by Hunyo's shouting. Thus, he did not dare to speak carelessly now. There were some things that one only had to know in one's heart before one had obtained enough power. It was best not to speak carelessly.
"Fatty, you really are ambitious," Ling Han said ruefully. "But please allow me to ask, what purpose would that have?"
Ma Duobao bared his teeth in a grin and said, "Shattering void tier shatters the empty void, which would allow only one person to become an immortal. My tanned brother, don't you think it would be better if we simply split apart this whole sky and allow everyone to enter the realm of immortals so everyone would be like dragons?" Ling Han was struck dumb. This really was an astonishing ambition, to split apart the skies so that everyone would be able to enter into the realm of immortals.
"Is that possible?" he asked.
"Without trying. How do you know that it's impossible?"
Ma Duobao asked calmly.
He had never thought that this damn fatty would actually have such a grand ambition and the domineering desire to benefit the whole world. He actually wanted to bring everyone with him into the realm of immortals. To be honest, Ling Han had never even thought of such a thing. Since the beginning of time, ascending to immortality had always been an individual matter. How could it be possible that relatives and friends of the individual would ascend along with him? But thinking about it again, if it really was possible to split apart the skies and cleave the earth, one could really bring his companions with him to ascend to the realm of immortals.
As long as one was strong enough. Ling Han mused silently.
It seemed that it was a very difficult feat for immortals to descend to the lower realm. If that wasn't the case,
Wouldn't legends about immortals appearing in the lower realms spread all over the world? He had obtained the memory crystal of Xiaofan, and had seen with his own eyes and heard with his own ears those immortals admit that they would be suppressed upon their descent into the lower realm, and then could be expelled from it. It was obvious that crossing into another realm was a very difficult thing.
Fatty, let me offer you a toast.
Ling Han raised his wine cup.
Regardless of whether he was willing to join or not, merely the fact that Ma Duobao had such an aspiration was worthy of his admiration.
Ma Duobao gladly clinked his own cup against his, and they both emptied their cups. My tanned brother. All right. My name is Ling Han. Just call me by name.
All right, my tanned brother.
Ma Duobao readily accepted his request, yet had completely no intention to change his form of address. Have you ever thought why there was a lapse in history 10,000 years ago? Ling Han could not help but feel secretly shocked. He recalled Xiaofan and his previous lifetime.
At the time, he had not had the slightest suspicion, but now that he thought about it, a lapse also appeared about 9,000 years ago in the history of his previous life.
A great many martial arts inheritances were buried in history, including alchemical knowledge. It was even worse off for array arts as the knowledge had practically all gone extinct.
Through calculation, the great catastrophe which led to the destruction of that era he was in actually just so happened to be 1,000 years later, which was precisely 10,000 years.
Once every 10,000 years, a great catastrophe would appear in this world. Furthermore, Xiaofan had left behind her last words, and said that all that had surpassed these 10,000 years were a gigantic deception. What had she meant? Did it have some kind of relation with the great catastrophe that took place every 10,000 years? He pondered for a moment, then said, Could it be that Brother Ma knows? I do indeed know, but the walls have ears, so I still cannot announce it verbally, Ma Duobao said seriously. Walls? Where were the walls? And where would the ears be? Ling Han did not understand, and merely continued to look at Ma Duobao. Ma Duobao raised a single finger and pointed straight up at the skies.
The Eye of Heavenly Tao?
Ling Han asked in shock. Ma Duobao shook his head, and raised his finger higher. Ling Han stared blankly for a moment before he instantly came to a realization. The Eye of Heavenly Tao was merely the guardian of this realm and was high above them. Then what was even higher than that? The realm of immortals. The realm of immortals was monitoring this realm? In addition, the enemies that Xiaofan encountered were her clansmen from the realm of immortals. Those people had mentioned the subject of destruction of the human race, and seemed to be the culprits behind that great disaster 10,000 years ago. What Ling Han did not understand was, wouldn't it be a very simple thing if the realm of immortals wanted to destroy the lower realm? Even if immortals would be suppressed and weakened upon their descent into the lower realm, wouldn't it be fine if a few more came? After all, there were only a few shattering void tier cultivators in this world, but how many immortals were there in the realm of immortals? My tanned brother, 10,000 years is a cycle. After 100 years, or perhaps there may only be a few dozen years left, another calamity will befall the world. If we don't think of something, then the tragedy that happened 10,000 years ago would repeat itself, Ma Duobao said. That can't be, right? Zhu Xian'er had been listening quietly from the side, but she finally gasped out in spite of herself. This topic was really too astonishing. Helian Sun Shui and Hu Niu, on the other hand, were completely indifferent. One of them had lost her memories, whereas the other was a child, so they had completely no concept of world destruction. Ling Han asked, Does Brother Ma know the source of all this? I can't say. Ma Duobao shook his head, his finger pointing straight up at the skies. Ling Han was astonished and asked, Could it be that announcing it verbally would lead to a great disaster? If the whole world consisted of dumb commoners, they would naturally be easy to rule over, Ma Duobao said with a smile. Thus, smart people would also have to pretend to be foolish. My tan brother, your talent is shockingly high, and in the future, you will definitely become someone important, but you must remember. There are too many strong elites in this world. Before you have enough power to protect yourself, you must remember to conceal your strength and bide your time. Ling Han nodded and said, Thanks for the advice. Then, my tanned brother, would you be interested to cooperate with me on this righteous undertaking? Ma Duobao asked. My current power is still too low. Let's see after I reach the heaven tier.
Ling Han said in refusal. It was naturally not possible that just because Ma Duobao had sketched out a grand plan and outlined a grand ambition, Ling Han would simply join his banner without any care.
Ma Duobao made no more attempts at persuasion. He merely clapped Ling Han's shoulder and said, "My tanned brother, I trust that you will definitely make the right choice. That's right, it hasn't been too peaceful recently, so you had better stay inside the city. Also, take this spirit talisman. Use it at the most dangerous moment as it will be able to save your life." He threw a spirit talisman at Ling Han.
Then, without waiting for Ling Han to ask him further questions, he left swiftly.
Ling Han and Zhu Xian meanwhile, were still savoring his last words. What did he mean?
Damn fatty Nyo's meat.
Yet Hu Nyo released a pitiful cry. Ma Duobao had left, but he had actually stolen all the meat skewers that had been on the barbecue grill. Chapter 554. Trapped. Reverie _ A night passed as Ling Han and the three girls returned to Spirit Treasure's pavilion. Although Shenyuan Ziguang said he would kill Ling Han if the latter came out, Shenyuan Ziguang wasn't that unoccupied to keep an eye on Ling Han for an entire day. Otherwise, a great battle would be inevitable. When it was afternoon, Yin Hong ran over hastily. "What happened for you to be in such a desperate rush?" Ling Han said with a smile. "Pa, this old lady is still a virtuous lady. How could you use desperate to describe me?" Yin Hong said, displeased. "A virtuous lady that has the words 'this old lady' on the tip of her tongue. You're truly the first I've seen," Ling Han said, smiling. "Now you've seen it for yourself," Yin Hong said unabashedly. "Oh right. There's a great matter I need you to know." "What matter?" Ling Han asked thoughtlessly. "In the recent days, there hasn't been anyone entering the city," Yin Hong said. "This counts as a great matter? How does it not? You know that what kind of a place Milion Treasure City is and how many people come and go every day? Millions. However, now there are only people going out, and no one is coming in. The entire city's much more desolate. Go to the Great Pavilion and see how many few customers there are," Yin Hong said in one breath. Ling Han thought all of a sudden that Ma Duobao said the previous day it wasn't peaceful outside recently, and that it was best to stay inside Milion Treasure City due to that. Could it be that this damned fatso knew the reason and that's why he intentionally warned him? "Do you know the reason?" Yin Hong shook her head and said, "Sent out a few groups of people to investigate the situation, but they also left without returning." She paused and then said, "Perhaps Milion Treasures has been targeted by some force, which set up blockades on the major roads so that people can only leave and not enter." Ling Han knocked on the table and said, "What force would do such a thing, and what merits does it have for them?" Spirit Treasure's pavilion did business, while the Alchemist Society refined pills. The two united could make medicinal pills circulate throughout the entire world. For martial artists, this was a beneficial thing, so who would destroy it? Even if the Heaven Sword sect, the Cloud Phoenix sect, and the other ancient sects had their own alchemists, they didn't need to do such a thing, right? "That's why we have to get to the bottom of it," Yin Hong said. Ling Han glared at her and said, "You're thinking of using me? Don't you want to know who did it?" Yin Hong said with a snicker. "When the sky falls down, there'll be an able person there to hold it. I'm merely in the flower blossom tier, it's none of my business," Ling Han said, not at all concerned. Yin Hong no longer laughed, but said, "This situation is truly somewhat unusual. The transmission stone already lost contact with the outside, and now people can only leave and not enter. It's as if Million Treasure City has become an abandoned city, not knowing what's happening outside. Aren't there heaven-tier elites? Just let them go have a look," Ling Han said. Someone conjectured that this could be a great conspiracy. Even if heaven-tier elites appeared, they might be targeted. Million Treasure City's defensive formation is first-rate. As long as it has the support of a sufficient amount of origin crystals, even a shattering void tier can't break in, Yin Hong said. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "So, heaven tier cultivators are scared of dying, making flower blossom tier juniors give up their lives." "That's not so. Although flower blossom tier warriors are weak, the elites instead do not care, and it might not be as dangerous." Yin Hong revealed a worried look. Mainly, Million Treasure City has become blind and deaf, and doesn't know at all what it'll face next. It has to get help from the outside. Ling Han sighed. Why was it unpeaceful everywhere he went? Does this count as being dragged down by you? He said, smiling. Haha, once aboard this old lady's pirate ship, just accept your fate. Coordinating with him, Een Hong laughed maniacally. However, this truly wasn't good news. After a few days, the situation became less and less reassuring because as people raised their heads, the entire sky couldn't be seen. What replaced it was a black-colored mist that covered the sky. Now, everyone felt uneasy. The city instantly was full of fear and anxiety. Ling Han took out the spirit talisman Ma Duo Ba gave him. He couldn't help but think that this damned fatso already knew that this would happen, telling him not to leave the city in the near future. Apparently, this wasn't the end, and something even more dangerous would happen. This spirit talisman could save his life. Ling Han laughed. Ma Duo Bao obviously didn't know he possessed the Black Tower, which was his greatest life-saving trump card. However, this spirit talisman shouldn't be wasted, because the things Ma Duo Ba had were definitely remarkable. This should be an instant teleportation talisman, he speculated. He was, after all, a heaven-tier elite in the previous life, and could guess it from the vein-like patterns on the spirit talisman. Instant teleportation talisman. Although I've tricked many people into thinking that I possess instant teleportation talismans and not the Black Tower, I never wouldn't thought I would actually receive one. This thing, even I didn't know how to create in the previous life.
It said that one must be a shattering void-tier elite, having clear knowledge of the secrets of the void, to refine it.
Ma Duo Bao really has many treasures. Did this guy obtain an ancient treasure trove? His possessions are truly surprising. His strength is unfathomable, and who knows where he's run off to now. Ling Han decided to leave the city to have a look as sitting still to await death wasn't his style. He had the Black Tower and could avert disaster in a hopeless situation. Moreover, he was also very curious. This was Million Treasure City, with heaven-tier elites keeping watch, yet someone dared to conspire against it. Just how powerful was this force? He had the three girls enter the Black Tower. If an incident happened in Million Treasure City once he'd left and they were exposed, it would be too late for regrets. However, the problem was that only Zhu Xian'er would listen obediently. Unfortunately, to Ling Han's worry, Helian Sun Shui couldn't be stored into the Black Tower. Hu Niu wasn't willing to enter the Black Tower, either, nagging him to let her stay with him. It couldn't be helped. They'd go together. Hu Niu could enter the Black Tower at a dangerous time anyway. Helian Sun Shui was a heaven-tier elite and might be able to trigger her instincts at a moment of life and death, recovering her terrifying strength. The city's formation was already activated to fend against unknown dangers. However, going out was a piece of cake. Everyone hoped for someone to go out to see the situation, and worried about there being no volunteers. The three successfully left the city. Black mist filled the air, impeding their sight. Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth, but it was useless. The mist was so thick that even it couldn't see through it. It wasn't that the Eye of Truth wasn't powerful enough, but that Ling Han's tier was a bit too low, influencing its effects. Be careful, Ling Han said, letting Zhu Xian'er out. Storing people into the Black Tower was the matter of a thought anyway. The four walked forwards, and soon the black mist revolved and surrounded them. Their visibility instantly decreased yet again. They were barely able to see things a meter away. Ling Han was slightly better, seeing twice as far. What formation is this? Zhu Xian'er asked. Amongst the three girls, she was slightly more reliable. Helian Sun Shui's intelligence was worrying, and Hu Niu was just a child. Ling Han's expression was grave as he said, "If my guess isn't wrong, this is the fourth killing formation." Chapter 555. Battling Shenyuan Zi Guang. Reverie _ The fourth killing formation? Zhu Xian'er asked in astonishment. According to the legends, there are spirits in heaven and earth that form 10 natural killing formations, Ling explained. The 10 killing formations are all extremely terrifying. The second killing formation to the 10th killing formation can even wipe out shattering void tears. Then what about the first killing formation? Zhu Xian'er couldn't help but ask. The first killing formation? Ling Han paused. It's also known as God-killing formation. Could it really kill gods? Zhu Xian'er cried out. That's right. Ling Han nodded. The first killing formation can erase even gods, the world's greatest killing formation. However, knowledge of formations was lost, so who could set up such a killing formation now? The fourth killing formation could even wipe out high-level shattering void tier elites. Yet someone could actually set it up at this day and age. Not to mention whether such a grand formation master existed, the materials used to set up the formation alone were something extremely extravagant. Then aren't we in extreme danger? Zhu Xian'er said. Ling Han nodded and said, no idea which force actually trapped Million Treasure City with the fourth killing formation. Are they trying to turn the entire city into a land of the dead? But Million Treasure City is Middle State's financial center. Its value consists in Spirit Treasure's Pavilion and the Alchemist Society. If everyone dies, how would it benefit them? If it were to take over a favorable location, that would be understandable, but Million Treasure City wasn't some holy land for cultivation and had no worldly treasures. Was it really necessary to unleash the fourth killing formation? Truly strange. Ling Han shook his head and said, we can't possibly break through this formation, and even if a shattering void tier elite came, they'd have to be at least in the 9th layer to qualify to break past it. Otherwise, even if a dozen came, they'd still fail. Zhu Xian'er obviously agreed. How many shattering void tier cultivators were there in the vast lands? No one knew, but at most several dozen. Even if all of them came, they might not even be able to resolve this formation. They retreated slowly for fear that the formation would react, killing them on spot. Fortunately, the fourth killing formation, which could kill shattering void tier elites, didn't seem to care much about nobodies like them. The formation was stagnant and had no reaction. On the other hand, it was also because they didn't go deep. The killing formation was a killing formation, after all, and wouldn't miss a small fish because its net was big. They retreated out of the formation, and Million Treasure City appeared before them. In reality, this was the entire killing formation's core, but since Spirit Treasure Pavilion also activated a formation to resist, this became a relatively safe area. Han Lin. With a sneer, an imposing and domineering figure appeared before them. Shenyuan Zi Guang. He stared at Ling Han, and his killing intent circulated. This wasn't in front of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, and was even outside of Million Treasure City. No one could stop him from murder here. Ling Han waved his hand and said, you guys go into the city first. I'll take on this guy. Be careful. Zhu Xian'er was kind and caring. Beat him up. While Hunyou waved her small fists. Beat him. Helian Xuanxue was now leaning towards Hunyou because she obviously wouldn't trust Zhu Xian'er after Lu Yutong and Li Xichan's brainwashing, leaving her only mimicking Hunyou. 2 grown-ups and a child returned to the city, while Ling Han and Shenyuan Zi Guang faced off. Ling Han didn't dare to take things lightly. Battling at the same tier, he had the confidence not to lose to anyone. However, Shenyuan Zi Guang was not only much higher in tier, he also had superb battle prowess. In reality, Ling Han was in a disadvantageous position. Shenyuan Zi Guang cut the superfluous words and attacked with a palm from afar. Hong, a sea of fire spread out, spiraling fiercely towards Ling Han. Ling Han carried out Demon Fairy Step, charging towards his opponent. There was too great of a difference in tier between him and his opponent, and it would be too stupid of him to fire against each other at a distance. In battle, one obviously should play to one's forte. To greet an opponent with one's weakness would be too unwise. Humph, dream on. Shenyuan Zi Guang snorted. He also carried out a movement art and pulled apart the distance between them while unleashing powerful attacks, taking the absolute initiative. His martial arts talent truly wasn't below that of Ling Han, and even surpassed it in certain aspects. At least, 22 flashes of Qi were currently number 1 amongst the younger generation, and under the amplification of Heaven and Earth Spirit Qi, it was as if there were 23 of him attacking Ling Han together, truly shocking. Ling Han responded with ease. He also had many trump cards, such as the Demon Birth Sword, the Thunder Battle Armor, and the Iron Sheep Body, and which of those couldn't turn the tables? He also laughed coldly and said, since you don't dare to fight in close quarters combat, Then have a taste of this. His figure retreated continuously, and instantly pulled 10 meters away from Shenyuan Ziguang. Earlier he kept trying to close the distance between them, thus this sudden retreat was out of Shenyuan Ziguang's expectations, making him stop momentarily and not counterattack immediately in fear that it might be a trap. Shenyuan Ziguang moved forward, while Ling Han also leapt backwards. Humph, my cultivation is higher than yours and my origin power is denser, pulling apart the gap. You're even less of an opponent, Shenyuan Ziguang said loftily, firing out a palm attack as 23 fire lions appeared and pounced at Ling Han. It was only 10 meters. It was impossible for origin power to be exhausted at such a small distance. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "You think too highly of yourself." He gestured as if drawing a bow, and instantly, a speck of light surfaced, turning into the shape of an arrow. With a xiao, it shot towards Shenyuan Ziguang. Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow. Fast as a ray of light. Shenyuan Ziguang was shocked, hurriedly summoning origin power in defense. The arrow shot at his chest, but the origin power shield appeared in time, blocking the arrow. Even so, it still made him groan. It was so painful that he almost hacked a mouthful of blood. In terms of power, he was obviously above Ling Han, but Ling Han focused power on one point, while he had to guard his entire body. This was obviously incomparable. It couldn't be helped, the arrow was too fast, and he didn't know what part of him it would aim at, forcing him to guard all over. Ling Han retreated with ease, escaping from the 23 fire tigers, and said, "You're nothing more than this." Shenyuan Ziguang made a very sullen face. No matter tier or battle prowess, he should firmly suppress Ling Han, yet he suffered a small loss, damaging his self-esteem. A godlike man like him. He was always the only one who, at a lower tier, won against other geniuses. How could he be beaten by someone at a lower tier? He was furious. A flame arose above his head and turned into a dragon, phoenix, and other ancient miraculous beasts, showing his extremely unique bloodline. "You are dead for sure," he announced coldly. Ling Han laughed and said, "You are really good at talking big." Who didn't know how to speak in declarative? Hong. At this moment, the black mist surged. Swords and axes covered in frightening vein-like patterns could be seen indistinctly within, radiating a shockingly cold glare. Ling Han's expression changed drastically, and he immediately ran towards the city. Shenyuan Ziguang was furious. Seeing that he was about to unleash his power, this brat actually abandoned the battle? He was just about to curse, but then he also saw the changes in the black mist, instantly feeling a chill inside. He also exerted power on both feet, running towards the city gate. The fourth killing formation had been activated. Chapter 556. The fourth killing formation. Reverie _. The killing formation was activated, and an extraordinary image arose, forming a terrifying great danger. After Ling Han returned to the city, he smiled at Shenyuan Ziguang, and said, "What? Why are you following me? Come, let's fight for 300 rounds." He assumed a fighting stance, ready to give it all. Shenyuan Ziguang was almost angered to death. "You freaking guarded the city gate, only to say, fight for 300 rounds. Could there be such a cheap person? Not to mention 300 rounds, if he was only stopped shortly, he would be killed by the killing formation right away. I'll come collect this debt from you in the future," he said in a grave voice, turning into an arrow and charging at the city gate. Ling Han originally wanted to mess with him, but feeling several formidable and terrifying mental spirits, he gave up on the idea. True elites had come, and definitely wouldn't sit idly as he killed Shenyuan Ziguang craftily. How unfortunate. He'd still wanted to make the other party suffer. Wang, Million Treasure City's great formation was also completely activated, and a white flash of light covered the city's skies like an eggshell. In reality, unseen beneath the ground was another half of an eggshell, guarding this ancient city from all directions with 0 blind spots. The Spirit Treasures Pavilion really wasn't short on the money at all. While this defensive formation was first-rate, it was also terrifying when it burned origin crystals. Hong, black swords 100 m long formed within the killing formation, emitting a shockingly cold glare.
Even though several heaven-tier elites were already at the top of the city, they all felt a chill within facing against the black swords.
It couldn't be blocked.
Those black swords were like completely activated spirit tools, and heaven-tier elites would definitely be killed instantly if they stepped near them.
The black sword slashed past.
Fortunately, the city's great formation had been activated, turning into a shield that blocked the black sword. Hong, vein-like patterns intertwined and shone, turning into countless fragments that scattered down from the sky.
Thankfully, it was blocked.
Everyone was greatly shocked. Which force insisted on targeting Million Treasure City? No matter whether it was Spirit Treasure's Pavilion or Alchemist Society, they were harmonious in bringing wealth, and were of status above the norm, never making enemies of any force, so why would they attract someone using such a killing formation?
Could this be the fourth killing formation? An old fogey cried out.
The fourth killing formation?
Most people were at a loss.
Killing formations are formed naturally by the world. There is a total of 10 kinds of them. Though ranked one after another, their powers are actually not much different, and according to legends, they could even kill shattering void tier elites. As for the first killing formation, it's the world's first unbreakable formation, claimed to be able to kill gods.
The old fogey explained.
What?
Hearing those words, everyone's expressions changed drastically. What could be done?
The fourth killing formation surrounded the city. Could Million Treasure City's defensive formation rival it?
Moreover, even shattering void tier warriors could be killed.
Once the city's defense broke, they would all die inevitably. Who was it to be so deranged? Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth and observed continuously, comparing as he said, the fourth killing formation isn't complete, and one shattering void tier elite can probably break it.
Boy, what do you know? Who the hell are you?
The adults are talking, kids screw off to the side. Once he spoke, it instantly aroused many people's dissatisfaction. These people were all self-assured in their experience, even flaunting their identities in a situation like this. However, there were also people who kept an open mind and revealed a hint of cheerfulness. It was rumored that Spirit Treasure's Pavilion had a shattering void tier big shot keeping watch, and if he took the field, wouldn't he be able to break through the formation? With this little friend's words, this old man suddenly feels the same.
It suddenly occurred to the old fogey earlier.
Otherwise, this city's great formation couldn't possibly block the fourth killing formation. This was a naturally formed killing formation, something extremely terrifying.
Only the other 8 killing formations could rival it.
As for the first killing formation, it could kill gods, so even the other 9 killing formations added together were inferior to it. If only Ling Han said so, obviously no one would believe it. The words of the lowly carried little weight. However, being confirmed by the old fogey, more people instantly believed those words, which also greatly increased their confidence. Please request the senior of the Spirit Treasure's Pavilion to intervene and break through this killing formation.
That's right, only that supreme being can do it.
Everyone said one after another. Although they had no right at all to request a shattering void tier elite to act, it greatly concerned their lives, so they could only muster up the courage to say so. Otherwise, there would only be the road that led to death ahead of them. A figure flashed by. It was shockingly the damned fatso, Yin Shuiyang. He looked outside the city as another black-colored spear formed, launching a second attack. He frowned and said, several pavilion masters have left Million Treasure City to visit other places. The Grand Pavilion Master also left? Everyone cried out.
He left. Yin Shuiyang sighed.
Now, this pavilion only has me, the only pavilion master keeping watch. Everyone was depressed. Heaven tier elites couldn't break through the fourth killing formation even if it was an incomplete one. Pray that the great formation guarding the city is strong enough, guarding till those seniors return. Everyone could only hope so. Ling Han, however, was curious. Those pavilion masters of the Spirit Treasure's Pavilion actually all left the city, moreover at the same time? Being able to move 8 pavilion masters together, could it be that an extraordinary historic site had been discovered? Yin Shuiyang shook his head and said, the 8 pavilion masters won't possibly return in near time. Probably 1 to 2 years would still be difficult.
What, that long?
Everyone's faces turned pale. 1 to 2 years?
Could this great defensive formation be maintained for 1 to 2 years? Milion Treasure City is an important land of Middle State. With communications cut off for a long time, people will definitely realize that something is wrong and run over to see exactly what's going on, someone said, filled with hope. However, can we really endure till that time? Someone said pessimistically. Hong. The fourth killing formation kept bombarding Million Treasure City. The Great City Guarding Formation formed a shield to protect it, but it wouldn't stand such crazy bombardment for long. Soon, cracks appeared on this shield, which shattered with a bang in the end. The Great City Guarding Formation formed a second shield, and continued to withstand the fourth killing formation's bombardment. In the short term, the defensive power could completely keep up with the destructive power, reaching a balance. The city's protection wouldn't be broken through. The problem was that the Great City Guarding Formation was activated by origin crystals, and under such high expenditure, how long could it be maintained? After Yin Shuiyong and a big shot of the Alchemist Society discussed shortly, they arrived at a conclusion. It could endure for half a year, and if the other forces took out their origin crystals as support, then it would last even longer. At such a time, no one dared to be selfish. Everyone contributed their origin crystals one after another, hoping that the Great Formation could persist until reinforcements arrived. Where are the experts of the Alchemist Society? Someone asked. Right, although alchemists primarily refined pills, the Alchemist Society's headquarters were here, so they hired a few elites to keep watch. Perhaps there might be a shattering void-tier super-elite there. The 2 heaven-grade alchemists left the city long ago with their heaven-tier followers, an alchemist said. His status was considerably high as he was a high-level Earth-grade alchemist. The Spirit Treasures Pavilion and the Alchemist Society left at the same time, but Million Treasure City suffered the surrounding attacks of the fourth killing formation. This wasn't a coincidence no matter how one looked at it. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.